35 on March 25th, 2021. I'm calling the meeting to order. Charlie, can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Chafe?
Here.
Commissioner Keller?
Here.
Commissioner Mendez?
Here.
Commissioner Simons?
Here.
Commissioner Zepko?
Here.
Vice Chair Young?
Here.
And Chair Thompson?
Here.
And all 7 commissioners are present.
Excellent. I think we have commission matters next. Is that you, Charlie?
Right. And you know, actually, I sent him the agenda earlier today with a reminder, but I do not see Deepak Sohane in the attendees. We can go ahead and do his resolution anyway, if you wish.
Is there any value to waiting, or should we just do it anyway?
We could wait and see if he comes during the meeting and then do it under, either between the two the two agenda items or at the end, if you wish. Or we could
it just seems like it'd be more meaningful if you were here.
Right. Or we could skip it. Well, shall we wait until he's later in the meeting then?
Yeah, I would prefer that.
I would think that, yeah.
Okay.
But we can swear in some new commissioners.
Yes, we can. That's the city clerk's job.
All right, good evening, planning commissioners. If I could ask for the 2 new commissioners, Henry Simons and Erica Zepko, to unmute and raise your right hands. What we're going to do is you're going to say the oath in unison, but you're each going to say your names individually. So when I say I, state your name. Henry, if you'd say your name first, and then Erica, you say your name, and then the rest of it you'll do in unison, repeating after me, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, let's do this. I state your name.
I,
Do solemnly swear or affirm.
Do solemnly swear or affirm
That I will support and defend.
That I will support and defend
The Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I bear true faith and allegiance.
That I bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully.
Discharge the duties.
Discharge the duties.
Upon which I'm about to enter.
Upon which I am about to enter.
As a planning commissioner for the city of Emeryville.
As a planning commissioner for the city of Emeryville.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And I have skipped my introductory remarks, so I will go back and be official. So I'm going to state for the record that this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act, waivers provided under the governor's executive order in response to the COVID-19 state of emergency. During the public health emergency, City Hall is closed to the public. The agenda states that the public may view this meeting as it's being live streamed on online and on ETV channel 27, and provide comments by submitting an online comment form, which will then be read into the record by staff. The comment forms can be accessed by going to our main City of Emeryville website, www.emeryville.org, and then navigating to the Planning Commission page. Once there, you will see a link, submit an online speaker card. The public also has the option of participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom and may provide public comment during the meeting using the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, pressing *9. The Zoom call-in information was provided in the posted agenda, and there is a link on the Planning Commission page as well. So even though we've moved into our agenda since then, we're now at the public comment period, and I have another statement to read. So I'm going to go ahead with that. Now is the time for the public comment portion of this meeting. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to items not on the agenda should have begun submittal of your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comment into the record. If you're participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, press *9, and the clerk will call on you at the appropriate time. So again, this is for anyone who wishes to do public comment on something that isn't on the agenda. And so Sherry, as the city clerk, have you received any comments?
We received one message from Ali Kashani, but I think he is present on the meeting, so he didn't provide a comment to be read. And I think Charlie will be playing the role of city clerk tonight at the meeting.
Okay.
And he is, Mr. Kashani is one of the applicants. So I think his speaker card was probably to indicate he wants to speak on his item.
Okay. So this is the time for if you're speaking on things that aren't on the agenda.
Other than that, I see no raised hands, and I have not received any online speaker cards.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. There is now one raised hand.
Okay.
Lewis S. So you may unmute and speak.
Hey, my name is Lewis. I'm the owner of Golden State Cannabis. I believe we're on the agenda tonight as well. And I don't know if this is the correct point in the meeting, but we would like to speak on behalf of our project. And I do have a PowerPoint in regards to that if the commission's interested in seeing that.
Oh, that is item 8.1 on the agenda. So you can speak when we get to that item.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, if there are no additional comments, I'll just close this portion of the meeting, which is the public comment part, and then we can move on to the approval of the action minutes.
Okay, I don't see any further raised hands or comment cards.
Okay. Are there any comments on the action minutes? Would someone like to move to approve them?
I'll move to approve them.
So I'm sorry, I just need to speak for one moment.
Yep.
That the two new commissioners should recuse themselves unless they've had a chance to watch the prior Planning Commission meeting, the February 25th one.
Well,
I have not watched that meeting, so I'm recusing myself. My name is Erica Zofko. I'm a new planning commissioner for the city of Emeryville, and I'm recusing myself from that last vote or action.
And then Henry, are you officially recusing as well?
Yes, I'd like to recuse myself as well. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then I think, Erica, you had made the motion, and then Tito, I know you're on mute. Do you want to second that?
Yeah, I might as well go ahead and second it. Thank you for noticing.
Okay. You want a roll call?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So the motion was by Commissioner Mendez, the second by Vice Chair Young. Commissioner Chafe?
Aye.
Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Mendez?
Aye.
Commissioner Simons is recused. Commissioner Zepko is recused. Vice Chair Young?
Aye.
And Chair Thompson?
Aye.
5 ayes. The action minutes are approved.
Okay, great. Next on the agenda is the Community Development Director's report. Is that for you, Charlie?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Chair Thompson. This is my report on the most recent City Council meetings and other items, but tonight I don't have any other items. So the City Council has met twice since your last meeting, and those council meetings were on March 2nd and March 16th. On March 2nd, the council had a discussion about REACH codes, which are amendments to the building code that go beyond the standard state code requirements to address sustainability goals, including all electric buildings and lightweight concrete. The council referred the matter back to the Sustainability Committee for further research and analysis. And the council also approved the Affordable Housing Bond Administration and Expenditure Plan, which lays out a comprehensive strategy for the financing of Emeryville's affordable housing programs. It includes the $50 million bond measure that the voters approved in June of 2018, plus other existing city funds, for a total of about $64.5 million in available funding for affordable housing projects and programs. On March 16th, as you know, at a special meeting prior to the regular meeting, the council appointed Henry Simons and Erica Zepko to the Planning Commission to replace Miguel Guerrero and Deepak Sohani, both of whom resigned in January because of having moved out of Emeryville. The council also appointed members to various other committees. The council heard the annual reports of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Housing Committee, the Parks and Recreation Committee, and the Public Art Committee. The Community Development Department staffs the Housing and Public Art Committees and plays an active role in the other committees. The council approved the 2020 General Plan Annual Progress Report, including the housing element, and authorized its submittal to the Governor's Office of Planning and Research and to the California Department of Housing and Community Development. As the commission will recall, you approved this report at your last meeting. The council approved a contract with PlaceWorks to prepare the 2023 to 2031 housing element of the Emeryville General Plan. The housing element is due to the state in January 2023, and there will be study sessions and public hearings about it at the Planning Commission during the next couple of years, so you can look forward to those. And finally, the City Council considered a proposed ordinance to modify the provisions for renewal of operating permits for cannabis businesses. This ordinance was previously considered by the council on February 2nd, at which time they directed staff to make some revisions to it. And on March 16th, the council passed the first reading of the revised ordinance, and it is now scheduled to come back for second reading and final passage on April 6th. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Are there any questions for Charlie?
I have a quick question. Charlie, do you know when the REACH votes are scheduled to come back to City Council, or what the timeline is for that?
I'm sorry, the what?
The REACH codes discussing?
Oh, no, there is no set time frame for that. It's been referred back to the Sustainability Committee, and it's on their schedule now.
Okay, thank you.
And when it went to them and then it was referred back, was there a particular request?
Just to do further analysis and research and outreach on the different items.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. All right, so this is the point which we are supposed to disclose ex parte communications and identify any conflicts of interest. Is there anyone who would like to identify any of those elements? Okay, and as before, the conflicts of interest, if there were one, we would identify them right before the agenda item as well, but it appears we don't have any. So that's good.
When visiting the property and you don't speak to anybody specific, you might talk to an employee. Does that count as something that you want to bring up?
You can mention a property visit.
All right, so I went to the Rotten Pizza today and I met with a couple employees and I just walked around the property, take a look at it. I walked to the other building, which is obviously the housing one, and visited that property only to be able to speak to a couple of neighbors that are adjacent next door to that property. Call it that way. Let's leave it like that.
Okay.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we will move forward to the public hearing, which is on the Hollis Cannabis Manufacturing and Non-Storefront Dispensary Incubator. Is there a staff presentation on this?
Yes, this is Miru's item.
Good evening, Commission. Just checking to see that you can see my screen. Yes?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
I see it.
Thank you. I'm Miru Desai, Senior Planner and Project Manager for this proposal. So a little bit of a background regarding cannabis businesses in our city. On April of 2017, the council adopted regulations to allow cannabis businesses in certain areas upon the city on the recommendation of the commission. This ordinance prohibits commercial cultivation, but allows for cannabis manufacturing and retail storefront businesses for medical and adult use. The ordinance allowed cannabis manufacturing in essentially non-residential zones, which include mixed use with non-residential, office, technology, light industrial, and heavy industrial zoning districts. A thing to note, cannabis manufacturing is a use classification that includes a variety of operations. And these are not just manufacturing, but also distribution, processing, storing, lab testing, labeling, R&D, and delivery. Subsequently, last year in September, the council amended the ordinance to allow these uses, that is cannabis manufacturing uses, in the mixed use with residential zone as well. The city so far has processed 3 major CUPs to allow cannabis manufacturing, and currently 4 businesses are in operation. One such CUP was permitted at this location, 6613 Hollis Street, on January of 2018 to allow various cannabis-related manufacturing uses. So this is the existing building on the Hollis site. As you can see, it also houses the Rotten City Pizzeria. In terms of project description, there are currently 2 tenants, Thunderstorm and Golden State Cannabis, that occupy about 2,800 square feet of ground floor space. Both these businesses got their operating permits in 2018 and have valid operating permits which are renewed annually. No problems have been identified since they started the operation in 2018. The applicant now wants to convert the existing 1,200 square feet of the second floor space for cannabis manufacturing operations. This space is currently used by Rotten City Pizza for seating operations. The restaurant on the ground floor will continue to operate with the patio open for customers. The applicant has indicated that the Golden State Cannabis would like to move into the cannabis distribution activities in addition to their existing delivery operations. The ownership has developed protocols and a plan regarding security and waste disposal that applies to all the existing tenants, and these protocols will also will apply to second floor operations as well. In terms of changes to the building, the access to the second floor space currently occurs inside the first floor of the building space occupied by the pizzeria. State regulations require that access to any cannabis space cannot be open to the general public. So the applicant is proposing to build a new access to the second floor on the north side of the building such that it is not accessible to the general public, and to reconfigure the patio space such that the Rotten City patrons will access the patio area by a separate entrance off Hollis Street. In terms of hours of operation, it will be a 24/7 operation, as may be expected in any industrial area, with deliveries restricted between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. Any new tenants will be required to get an operator's permit from the police department, in addition to all applicable permits from the state's Bureau of Cannabis Control. And if Golden State does occupy the second floor space, they will need to amend their operating permit that they have. So this is the existing site plan. 66th Street is on the top, Hollis Street on the side. And as you can see, the majority of these spaces are occupied by Thunderstorm, with about 200 square feet of space currently occupied by Golden State Cannabis. So these are the stairs that I was talking about that lead to the second floor. As you can see, you cannot access the staircase without entering the pizzeria. So that is what needs to be changed. And that is what they will be doing. As you can see, this wall, this has been closed off, and a new entrance from the outside is being proposed. So the green line shows essentially the route that the cannabis operators in this facility will be using. And the red line is coming out of the pizzeria, out onto the street, and then walking to the patio area and entering through a separate gate right here. And these are the tenant improvements on the second floor. Basically, they are dividing up the space for storing, packing, dispatch, and other uses. The blue arrows you see are the location of the cameras. In terms of conformity to planning regulations, this site is located in the light industrial zone where cannabis manufacturing is permitted. It also lies in the North Hollis overlay zone, but the overlay zone has no land use or design provisions which would be applicable to this proposal. There's no change in FAR or building height. In terms of parking, this does not trigger any parking, in addition to the fact that the city no longer has a minimum parking requirement for non-residential uses, which have an area-based estimated parking demand. The first 1,500 square feet is subtracted from the gross square footage of the use when calculated estimated demand. And since the addition is only 1,200 square feet, this will not trigger any additional estimated parking demand. And this would apply to the bicycle parking. So no bicycle parking, additional bicycle parking is being triggered by this proposal. So the cannabis businesses do have 4 spots, parking spots leased at the Emery Tech. This was part of the use permit that was approved originally in 2018. There is, like I mentioned, no additional bicycle parking requirement is triggered, and there are existing 4 short-term and 4 long-term parking spaces at the facility. In order to approve this proposal, the Commission needs to make the following 5 CUP findings. We believe that these findings can be made. The cannabis manufacturing continues to be a new industrial activity that will contribute to the economic diversity of the city. It will reuse an existing building in an industrial area with compatible surrounding uses and will not pose a burden on existing utilities. And it complies with the applicable regulations, and the conditions of approval ensure that the performance standards will be met. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve this conditional use permit amendment subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report, as well as in the memo that was distributed by Charlie on March 23rd. This memo includes 2 conditions of approval, which were honestly not included in the staff report. And so these need to be included as they were approved in the original use permit. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Maru. Are there any commissioners with questions for Maru? Commissioner Keller?
Yeah, Maru, speaking of the last statement you made of the memo, I was wondering if you could clarify for me and perhaps for some of the newer commissioners on the sidewalk issue. Can you clarify if the sidewalk was part of the original plan that was presented as on this project in 2018, or was it a condition that the commission added?
It was both. If you recall, originally the item was on December 2017, and then it got continued to January 2018. And as part of that, the commission at the General Planning Commission saw both the plan and added these conditions regarding the timing of the sidewalk construction and the loading zone construction. And both of those things are triggered with the 3rd operating permit. And at the time of the proposal, at the time in 2018, the applicant had 3 potential tenants. And that's how the condition got framed. But as it worked out, right now, there are only two tenants.
All right, so what triggers the sidewalk work then if there isn't going to be a 3rd tenant?
Well, in the future, there could be a 3rd tenant. There is no guarantee that, you know, that may not change.
So is this the appropriate time to find out when the sidewalk will be installed, or should we wait till after the presentations and we have commissioner comments?
You could wait to hear the presentation from the applicant as well. Okay. And you can, you know, ask the applicant in terms of the tenant situation as well.
And there will be an opportunity for the commission to ask questions of the applicant following their presentation. So you could do that at that time.
Because I'm seeing, well, what I'm confused about is that it was a condition to have the sidewalks, the curb, the tree wells, the loading dock done before the third tenant entered. And so now that there's not going to be a third tenant, that means it could possibly never happen. So I'm just confused on to, is this a condition we have to add? Because your memo didn't specify when this had to be installed, just that they had to work with the city about the details, but it never spelled when this has to be done. So I just need to get some clarification on that.
Well, the way the condition currently stands is it's after the third operating permit. Right. And if the commission wishes to modify that, I would suggest that you wait until your deliberations after the public hearing has been opened and closed, and then you can discuss what you want to do about that.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Mendez?
Yeah, I had a question for you, Miru. So, and I don't know if I caught it in the floor plan, but I know that this is light industrial. So does it need to meet ADA requirements, and do they need to do any ADA upgrades? I'm asking because I don't think I saw like an elevator or anything going up to the second floor. I just had a question about that.
This does not trigger any improvements in the existing building. They're not adding any square footage. They're reusing existing space, and it's for a different use.
And if I could just elaborate a bit, we generally review all pending applications that are going to the Planning Commission with other city departments, including the Building Division and the Fire Department. So they've all reviewed this plan. I don't know if Miru mentioned this, but we reviewed this at our last Development Coordinating Committee meeting, which includes Building, Fire, Public Works, and many other departments. And what Miru is, and I would say that ADA applies to everything, but it's different things trigger, different measures. So our Building Division has said that it's okay the way it is.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Young?
Yeah, Maru, in terms of the pizza place, they're having their space modified a little bit. They use the box that's the freezer that's on the second floor. And on the plan, it is kind of unclear where that freezer went. Is that in the plan somewhere?
It's not in the plans. I think that would be an appropriate question for the applicant to ask as to where the freezer is going to be going.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No other questions.
Okay, great. Maru, I have one question. I just had a question about the use of the sidewalk, but, and now that there's the separation between the entry door and the patio, has there been any discussion about the use of that sidewalk and the sort of non-adjacency that creates?
In what way?
There's, you now walk onto the public sidewalk to reach their patio, so it's not really a patio to the building anymore. I just wondered if that had brought up any questions.
No. As Charlie mentioned, this gets reviewed by different departments, and including Public Works, and it wasn't brought up.
Okay. I just wanted to see if it was
of any kind. Yeah. No.
Okay.
It may be an operating inconvenience, but I don't believe there's any code requirement that says you can't access a patio via a public sidewalk.
Okay, great. Thank you. So at this time, if there are no more comments, there is an applicant presentation next?
Miru, can you tell me who I need to promote to panelist for the presentations?
Well, we have Lewis. He's from Golden State.
Okay.
And I saw Jonas Bernstein in the attendees. You can elevate him as well in case the commission has any questions, since he's the applicant.
Okay. All right. Lewis and Jonas Bernstein have now been elevated to applicants, and they can address the commission.
Hello, everyone.
Did you have a presentation?
I'm not Lewis, but Lewis does.
Yes, I know. There he is.
Sorry about that. Took quite a while to reload there. I see we got Jonas on here. I don't know if you all had any questions for Jonas or if I can give my presentation for the project.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to go ahead with the presentation.
Okay, cool. So my name is Louis Samuel. I'm the owner of Golden State Cannabis. Great to be back at the Planning Commission. It's been a couple years since we got approved for the first part of the project. We've been really stoked to operate out of Emeryville the whole time. And so I put a little presentation together about what we're trying to do in expanding to the upstairs space and why we need more space. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And let's see. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we are Golden State Can here. And we got started in Emeryville back in 2018. I had been working with Jonas. Miru actually put me in touch with Jonas in 2017 before California even had any licenses recreationally. And so based on working with through Emeryville and Jonas, we were able to get license number 46 in the state for non-storefront retail and license 133 for distribution, which came a little bit later. Basically, our mission as a company, we're a very customer service oriented business, and our mission is to elevate the mood of our members before they even try the product. So we take more than just sort of coming through, dropping off some product. We take it on ourselves to try and make sure that they're in a positive state of mind when they're receiving that so that we can have the maximum effect. The top left picture there is our neighbor farm up in Covelo, California, in Mendocino. The next one is some masks that my mother actually sewed for the staff when the pandemic was first starting. And then bottom right there is us at a trade show, Santa Cruz Music Festival, back when music festivals were still a thing. And our slogan is "Have a Dank Day." Just a brief history about the company is that my original business partner lived across the hall from me at the UC Santa Cruz, also known as UC Smokes Cannabis. We established a medical collective in 2016. And then as the adult use market opened up in 2018, that was kind of the obvious path for us. So we moved quickly to do that. Ryan has since left the company and moved on to other things. And we are my other original partner, who was Ryan's roommate there at UC Santa Cruz. He runs a farm in Mendocino now. And I was able to get that property licensed as well. So we kind of have a good flow of the supply chain. Our current licensed premises at Hollow Street is 196 square feet combined. So that's split up into about 100 square feet of distribution and 96 square feet of retail. And I'll touch on a little bit more reasons why that space is kind of where we've outgrown it a little bit. These are our two existing licenses there on the state level. Why we have room for growth, that is that my chief operations officer, Big D right there, this is our space. This is the most organized that it's possible to be in there. And most of the time we've been a retail delivery service, and we're now currently branching out a lot more into wholesale distribution. And so based on the volume of product that we need to supply other distribution companies and dispensaries, we're running out of space. We do have our branded Golden State branded flower in approximately 20 dispensaries around the state right now, quite a few different counties, and we've been growing that pretty quickly. We just started that really in September, and it's been taking off because we have a lot of ties to farmers that most people in the industry don't. They just buy from other distribution companies. The 1,100 square feet upstairs will allow us for much needed breathing room and will allow us flexibility to do sort of increase the operations. I do feel that we're at a critical point in our space. That's Dylan up there at the top looking for some product that we weren't able to find because it's kind of messy in there, and he's not a small guy whatsoever. So I can't be having him climbing up on the safes. Top left there is our farm. We are expanding this year, and Mendocino County is also talking about increasing their limit from 10,000 square feet of cultivation to 10% of the property size, which is going to allow us to significantly expand more in the future. And there's no way that we'll be able to store the amount of product that the farm is going to produce this year in our current office. On the bottom there is a billboard that we ran through January, right on 880 or like 580, 880 there next to the office. This is at the Gilman Street exit. If you're heading in the southbound direction from Richmond, you would see it right in front of the outdoor media building. Ohana Cannabis also in Emeryville had a billboard on there. And with the increase in clientele that we're seeing is just one more reason why even on the retail side where we pick up edibles and vape cartridges and stuff, we're needing to increase our inventory and running low on space there. The main priorities for us upstairs, should the commission approve our project, is of course compliance with the local regulations and the state regulations. We have some specific conditions of approval from Emeryville that we operate under, and beyond that, the state has their own regulations on operating hours, product limits that drivers are able to carry, when we can receive deliveries, as well as how the specifics of who can drive our delivery vehicles and what kind of security they need on them. Additionally, security is a very top concern for us. There has been some security issues in the building in the past, we've learned. And so security lighting, keypad alarms, we have safes that are minimum 800 pounds and they're bolted to the ground. And upstairs we're gonna continue to do that. In answer to the walk-in fridge question, due to the nature of those type of things, they're very thick to be insulated. And so it kind of provided some natural security for us. So, we're working with Jonas, but depending on what he wants to do, the plan currently would not be to take it out, but to convert that. But I'll let Jonas speak a bit more on that. Then, of course, for me, also, after a few years in operation there, I've come to be very close friends with everybody who works at Rotten City Pizza, working kind of side by side. So the pandemic has been hard on the pizzeria. And I'm hoping that by being able to take up the space and hopefully work with them as well to keep that profitable so that there's a long life in the pizzeria. This is the specifics of our security plan. These are the cameras, the ADT monitors, and we have the state mandates that every inch and every access point is under surveillance. So we have a number of these on our floor plan for the upstairs building. We have security lighting that Jonas has installed outside, and that will also be increased when the access point, if it were to be changed to access the upstairs. This is a video recorder that is state required to be in a locked box so that nobody, should they break in, would be able to take it. And then a little bit more details on interior and external lighting. This is the type of storage that we use. American security safes are considered to be top of the line. And we also, as far as the upstairs facility, have these wire mesh rooms that come in a kit and are then installed and bolted to the ground. Any further security would take place inside them, and only management will have the keys to these. A top concern that is often brought up is odor mitigation. Because of the nature of the product, it does smell, and if you're not a consumer, then you're not necessarily keen on that. So we go to pretty great extent to make sure that there's no odor there, which is also in the state and local regulations, but we go beyond with the size of the carbon filter that we use. So the inside of the carbon filter is packed tight. It's a similar method that's used when backpacking and water filtration if you pump through it. This is just much finer. These are the same things that if you ever see on the side of a big semi truck or 18-wheeler, they have these large smokestacks. They're just big versions of these. The air gets pumped through them, and when it comes out, there's no odor left over. We do have an odor plan was stamped by a certified industrial hygienist as well. That's all I have at the moment. So just want to thank everybody for your time. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, whatever is directed towards me. And then if there's any other questions for the actual applicant as well.
Thank you, Louis. So at this time, are there any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Chafe?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I had a question about the transportation demand management plan. I'm not sure if that's best directed at you or at Jonas.
That I can probably answer that.
Okay, great. So yeah, what I saw in our packet was that the transportation demand management was mostly for employees. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about any changes that you anticipate in the number of vehicles serving your company as a result of the changes you're applying for.
So as a result of the changes on the immediate, I don't see any change because we're already doing all the business that we plan to be doing in the upstairs. We're just extremely inefficiently packed into that tiny space. So we're not able to operate comfortably, but we are still doing what we're doing. We have a packaging team that is, putting out at least 20 pounds a week in eighths around the state. And once we have the increased space to do that, I think they'll be able to do that more comfortably, but I don't anticipate more cars right away. As business grows, I do anticipate that we'll need to keep bringing on more staff. And we haven't had any issues because there is a pretty large amount of parking on the side of the building, as well as we have the pass at Emerytech. But we're definitely interested in working with the city, should it be an issue or anything, the number of cars that we have there, on how to mitigate that, and keep the flow of traffic smooth on the streets.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions from commissioners? Commissioner Keller?
Yeah, I'd just like to, we can bring this up in more detail, but I just wonder if Jonas has any remarks or any timeline or idea on the sidewalks on 66th Street with the planters and et cetera.
So as far as that goes, when I originally planned, I planned on having multiple tenants. So you guys had asked me to figure out the sidewalk. So we were intending to do the sidewalk just as needed based on the third operating permit. At that time, the third tenant backed out, didn't take it, and then thunderstorms basically took all the space in the facility. At that point, didn't trigger a third tenant, didn't trigger a third operating permit. And so it wasn't really a thought. It was just like, let's get to business. Let's see how these guys operate. Let's see what's going on. A couple of years go by, pandemic hits. It hasn't really been a thought, but I haven't had a chance to bring anybody else into the building. The flow of phone calls have still been coming in, but the space wasn't available. Rotten City Pizza has been around for about 12 years. I opened it in 2009, and it's been a struggle. And so it's got a huge footprint, and it basically is struggling to survive. And I felt like either I had to get rid of Rotten City Pizza to convert the whole entire space, or I would have to kind of figure something out. And this was kind of like the best of both worlds, to be able to lighten the footprint of Rotten City Pizza so it can still be manageable and employ the 14 people that are there, and hopefully give more space to the building, which would in turn trigger either another operating permit, which then in turn would trigger the sidewalk. So that's just the truth. That's just where it's at. It's just never really popped.
Okay, so you don't have any thoughts on when that will happen or if it will, I mean, the thing is it has to happen. It is part of the conditions of the first approval. It just was gonna happen when the third tenant moved in. So it's part of the original plan to install the sidewalks.
But based on getting a third tenant, which I've never gotten, and that wasn't an intention, that's just the way it shook up. So,
right, but the thing is a third tenant however you divide it, you still have so many square feet. And now so many square feet is occupied, whether it's one tenant, two tenant, or three tenants. The facility is fully occupied. And that's what I think the commission and we need to discuss is when does it trigger? Because we're looking at improving our city, creating amenities, and the way we got the sidewalks that we have in the city and the way we got utilities put underground is when people develop their properties, they develop their part that funded the city. And that's kind of where you are at this point. So whether it's now that you're maxed out with all your square footage, however many tenants, I think we made an error attaching that improvement to the city to a tenant instead of a time frame or a square footage thing. So that's fine. Well, go ahead.
I understand that. I think that's fair. I mean, the intention is that it has to be done at some point, right? Obviously, we're in a pandemic and financially things aren't the same for me. So I'm not in a situation where I want to just go ahead and be like, oh, let's just spend money that I don't have. So ultimately, there's a reason behind me downsizing Rotten City and giving more space to the cannabis industry and my existing tenants. I've got a business that's failing that is basically absorbing a big portion of my space. And as a landowner and as a business owner, I have an opportunity to still kind of balance the system where I'm not taking it and losing too much money, but I'm still employing 14 people through the pandemic. If I had to operate Rotten City with the upstairs and the yard and still have that footprint, it just wouldn't be possible. The basis of turning Rotten City back to its original basis of 9 stools is what we started off of. And we increased to the upstairs, which now it's just going back down to a smaller thing. This all coming back to, parking in the neighborhood's different now with the meters on the block. So there's a lot going on. So I'm willing to work and do whatever you guys want me to do, as long as it's within reason for what we can figure out together. That's as best I could say. It's a little frustrating in a sense to me.
It is, and I have to just, make the other commissioners aware, because I really think I'm the only one that was on the commission when this came. I don't know if Chair Thompson was there or not, but we had the same discussion at that time that it was financially infeasible for you and it was difficult. And I understand that, and the pandemic has made things worse. We'll have to, discuss that as a commission, but it's a thing you brought up before the pandemic that it was financially difficult for you. And I understand that. But we also have to look at, part of improving our city is growth of business, but it's also improving the physical aspects of the city. And we rely on our property owners to help us do that.
Sure.
So
I understand.
Thanks.
I've been a business owner in Emeryville for over 20 years, and I've been a property owner for quite a while too. I've had 3 different businesses in Emeryville. I've kind of seen it. I've morphed into a lot of different things, and I'm on my tail end of my experience. So I get it. Let's try to work together and see how we can make it work for everybody.
Sounds good, Jonas. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. I think we had another comment. Was it Tito?
Yes, it was.
Commissioner Young?
Yeah. Yes, it was. Okay, so thank you very much for making your presentation. It was nice. I really liked it. So obviously, Jonas, my question is to you on, there's a couple parts of this project that I think we really need to think about. And part of it is like the health department, when they approve a restaurant or when they approve a food service, they have requirements, triple sinks. They have a requirement on what you can do with the freezer. They have requirements on particular office space, all that kind of stuff.
I get that. You're asking about the walk-in upstairs.
And when the spaces get cut down, and you remove those sort of things because you're trying to shift another business into it, the plan doesn't really cover these things well. At least they're not indicated in that manner. So if it could be shown on how you maintain this, and I understand everything that you're going through, just wanting to make sure that, we don't end up in a, cat chasing its tail kind of thing in the future.
Well, okay. So let me, I built Rotten City. I'm originally a chef, and I've been, basically been in the culinary restaurant industry for 30 years. So the walk-in upstairs was a addition to Rotten City when Rotten City was basically had 24 employees when minimum wage was $9 an hour. And we were cranking, and it was a fun time. Rotten City barely does $600 to $1,000 a day at best in sales, which means all of the space downstairs can handle the flow of business that's coming in and out of Rotten City. There is no need for the usage of the additional 1,000 square feet and the size of the walk-in to operate when you're only getting rid of 25 pies a day. It's like it's a real simple process. It's like Rotten City's like either going to be around because it's like I'm making these adjustments, or it's going to die. So I don't know what you're asking. We pass all health inspection codes. We do everything responsible. We are downsizing the business because we don't have the business.
Jonas, do you have other freezer space downstairs where they can store food?
We've never had a freezer. Everything is made fresh in-house. Everything is brought in almost every day. We make everything by hand. So we're not basically sitting there and storing product for weeks. The only stuff that we store are our dry goods and our boxes. Everything else comes in and gets used. We've always rotated our inventory on a weekly basis.
Nonetheless, it's still a requirement. Requirement's a requirement. So whether you use these things or not, the health department is generally, pretty strict about what you do with these places. And so I'm just trying to bring it up. That's what I'm trying to do.
So Vice Chair Young, a quick question. Are you actually looking for a clarification about the freezer capacity at Rotten City? Because it sounds as though, and Jonas, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds as though that you have a walk-in upstairs, but you won't be using that when you convert the space.
The walk-in is only for beer, and we don't have that type of environment anymore, and we'll never will have that type of environment anymore. We'll have 9 bar stools at best. The walk-in refrigerator will be used for Lewis's product storage, which is ideal for cannabis. It is not being removed from the building. It does not hinder anything from Rotten City's production. Rotten City's my business, created by me, run by me. Those are my employees, directed by me. Passing all health codes. We have everything that is responsible. We have a 3-compartment sink. We have a 2-compartment sink. We have hand sinks. We have mop sinks. We have floor sinks. There's nothing that's being removed from the upstairs that affects Rotten City at all from the downstairs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's a triple sink on the 3rd floor. So on the 2nd floor.
There was a bar upstairs, and there is no longer a bar upstairs because Rotten City does not have that type of business anymore. So the triple sink would be perfectly for Lewis's employees to get water for their coffee and for whatever else they need.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah, no, and this is, questions and clarifications. So we're just trying to make sure we have all the questions answered.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah. And Vice Chair Young, have you asked your last question? Do you have additional questions?
That's all I have for now.
Okay. Are there any additional questions? Commissioner Zepko?
Please forgive my ignorance because I was not on the commission previously. And again, new to the Planning Commission, so perhaps I'm missing something, but it seems like you're talking about slightly different concerns, but they're valid concerns. Jonas is coming from a perspective where he's like, hey, I'm a business owner, and Commissioner Keller and Commissioner Young have really valid points about we still need to make sure that everything is up to code. Why not just make these conditions that you previously had about the sidewalk, not to say tit for tat, but conditional in the sense that if we agree to make these concessions or accommodations, can't it just be that as a, you know?
So Commissioner Zepko, I'm gonna hold you here just because we're officially asking questions of the applicant.
Oh, I see.
We will move into deliberation in a moment.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I guess that was my question, is that not like something to ask, which is like, would he be okay? Would Jonas be okay with meeting the rest of the things that the commission has set out in terms of like changing around the sidewalk, is what I think Commissioner Keller was describing, right? Like, or making sure that those things had be met, but like as a, like.
If I may chime in?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is really the time for clarification questions.
Oh, so that's not a clarification?
If there's things about the proposal that the commission doesn't understand and needs clarified, later on during the commissioner's deliberations, if the commission wants to add a condition, it's not uncommon for the chair to ask the applicant whether or not they are okay with that condition or not. So that could come during deliberations. Chair Thompson, if you don't mind, I would just like to clarify one other thing, which is that the application before the commission is for a use permit for a cannabis manufacturing business. It is not for a restaurant. The restaurant is already there. The restaurant is not part of the application that is before you. What is before you is to be able to make the findings for this modification to this cannabis business. So I believe that's what the commission should be focusing on.
Okay. And so do we have enough? Have we completed our clarification questions? Are there any outstanding questions?
Commissioner Bryant, a question. Is there something that changes as a result of a business owner owning multiple businesses in the same space that we should be aware of? Because otherwise I don't have any other questions. Your question, you had just clarified that it had to do with the fact that he owns a restaurant, but that has nothing to do with what's in front of us, correct?
That's right. I mean, it is slightly complicated because part of the space that is being considered as part of this use permit for a cannabis business is a space that is currently used by the restaurant.
And I'm asking for clarification, are there provisions that have to do specifically with when an owner owns more than one property and then there's like mixed use between the two businesses that he or she?
Not in this case.
Okay, then I have no more clarification questions.
May I say something real quick?
Sure, go ahead, Jeff.
Rodden City has not had a customer in it in over a year. And we never brought anybody in once the city or in Alameda County or ever let anybody back in. From the pandemic related, we were just like, whoa. So, I mean, this is the way the place has been operating without the upstairs for a year. I just wanted to just put that from a perspective of what the clientele was missing, or from an employee perspective, they're downstairs and that's where they're supposed to be. From a clientele perspective, they used to be upstairs, they'd play pool, they'd watch TV and they'd hang out, but that's not the type of business that Rodden City is ever going to be again.
Yeah, I have a quick question for Louis. In terms of that operation space, you do have a small space and then you would circulate outside and go up the stairs. Is that is still useful in terms of having a circulation and the spaces separated? I know it's sort of the configuration of the existing building, but does that suit your operations?
It does, for sure. The main thing that we need space for right now is distribution. So distribution is the component of the supply chain where you do packaging, labeling, just sort of basically turning bulk pounds into sellable or jarred flour in eighths. And that is the component of the business where we're growing the fastest right now. What we're also finding to be like the most profitable as is wholesale rather than retail. And because of that, we need to store large amounts of product. So when you go to the business of any large distributor, they have walls of the yellow topped totes. You may see them at Costco or whatnot. They're very popular for storage. They're very industry standard box that stores product. And they have like just full walls of them stacked. And we're limited. We have no potential currently to get to that point because of the spatial confines. We're also not legally allowed to store any product outside of the space. So for me, at the very least, this would allow us to store as much product as customers would be interested in buying from us.
Okay, great. Okay, if there are no other questions, I will go to part C. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Mendez.
Yeah, I just had one like really quick question. Is there a reason why we couldn't keep the door going from the restaurant into the outdoor garden, and maybe moving the division along the wall where along the new wall? Just wondering, like, if that was like not an option at all.
Are you so we thought for path of travel and security, a mix of space, it's just really not, you can't mix the general public with the cannabis space. So we were trying to create a safe path of travel. We already have it going back in that corridor. So we thought if we put a fence, and what happens is a lot of people come into Rotten City, grab slices, grab a box, it's takeout and to go. So they go wherever they go. So they automatically go out in the street. They walk, or if they choose to go to the patio, they normally go around. Sometimes because of it's kind of weird because the past year there has been no traffic in that area that's been around. We blocked it off. We have an ordering window. It's totally, we could configure the space accordingly. If you guys feel like there's a better configuration of that, if we have to push back the gate, point of entry.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering if, because there's like a really large gate there, you're not, Thunderstorm's not planning on using that large gate for like deliveries or anything like that, right? Their loading dock is on the other side, on 66.
Plan for that with that, when they need to do a delivery or like a load in, they'll come in, they'll close off the door, they'll put like a little rope, and then they'll open the gate, and they'll kind of, it's part of their operation plan is using that driveway. So we thought that was best to just close it off altogether to the general public and not have to worry about that moment when they needed to go through. Because customers already go in and out the front door and go around and into the yard, we figured it was already the same path of travel. And it was just not mixing the two spaces.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That was my only question. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Well, this is a public hearing officially. So now is the time for the public hearing on this item. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to this item should have begun submittal on your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comments into the record. If you're participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen. If you're calling in, please use *9, and the clerk will call on you at the appropriate time. At this time, I think, Charlie, have you received any comments by the online comment card, or has anyone raised their hand?
I do not have any online comment cards. Let me just double check. I do not see any online comment cards, and I do not see any raised hands among the attendees.
Could I say one more? On something Jonas had said.
Public hearing is going on right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so officially we have to close that first. All right, so in that case, if there are no additional requests to make comments, the public hearing portion of this meeting is now closed. And then Louis, you had a question?
As far as something that Jonas had said about Rotten City prior, Jonas, how long was Rotten City open for without the upstairs?
Rotten City was open with the upstairs for about probably seven years or so, 8 years.
And then the upstairs was just an addition that got added.
Yeah, it was an addition to when we started to get really busy, when we started to convert. As the minimum wage increased, we had to go from being carry 23 employees, with most of them were like maybe 10 or 12 of them were delivery drivers, and minimum wage kept increasing. And so we couldn't afford to keep that type of staff. So we basically had to downsize. And so we had to figure out how to capture that business back. So we had to flip the structure of 66% takeout and delivery to 66% dine-in. And that was kind of why the upstairs and the patio all was there to increase all that. But there's just not that type of business structure anymore. It's not that type of scene. So having that huge footprint is just a dead space.
Okay. Well, at this time, we're going to bring this back to the commission. And this is the part where we're going to deliberate, so we can talk about it. And I know on the topics that have already come up was the topic of the sidewalk that for deliberation. I don't know if there are other topics for deliberation. I don't know, Commissioner Keller, if you want to kick it off.
Okay, thank you. So Maru, if I could ask you to bring up the slideshow you had showing the site plan. Maybe we could bring people up to speed, because the sidewalks we're talking about are not along Hollis Street. They're what would be, that go up one.
I actually have the plan.
Oh, perfect. There you go. Okay, so this is the plan that we approved in 2018. So
Sorry.
That's okay. Keeping me on my toes, Maru. So the sidewalk on Hollis Street is not under discussion or part of the topic. It's installing a new sidewalk on 66th Street. Right now, there is no sidewalk there, and vehicles park parallel to the building at a 90 degrees. So they park facing into the building, which actually is all the public right of way. So actually, as you walk down this street, there are no sidewalks on this southern side along where Cliff Bar is, and there's no sidewalks on this street. So part of what we do as a city is we try to increase and improve the pedestrian realm. So part of this project was to add sidewalks and planting areas. And then if you see in the middle there between the two trees, there's a delivery driveway. So this was conditionally put in that this would be installed at the time that the third tenant took out the permits to start their operation or to do their improvements. I can't remember which. Since there was no third tenant, this has not happened yet. So my concern is now that there's not going to be a third tenant, we're never going to see this improvement to the neighborhood. And this is part of the general plan, is that we're to do projects like this. And as I stated, every project we've done where we underground utilities, it was project by project, block by block. We didn't underground all the utilities in one, neighborhood or one street at once. Right in front of my house on Christie Avenue, we didn't have a sidewalk north of Pacific Park Plaza until the apartments were built. They were asked to put in sidewalks. We asked Biomed Realty on the project we just approved to them. They're going to improve the projects on Horton. Sherman-Williams is improving all the sidewalks on Horton and Sherman Avenue in front of their buildings. This is how we improve our city. So this is part of what we need going forward. Now, understanding that, COVID times are not normal times, but we do need to put some understanding on when, this improvement is going to happen. And so I just wanted to make sure that all the new commissioners understand that this is part of the project. This is something we need to do. It's just the way we had worded it with the third tenant coming in has given us kind of a stumbling block, and now is our opportunity to fix that. So that's more or less all I had to say. First, and what I also want to say is I'm really sad. I know Jonas works really hard. I'm really sad that, his business is struggling. I'm just glad he has survived the worst of the pandemic. I still go to Branchline. I went when he owned it, and I go there still with the new owner. But I'm glad that, he's got a tenant that's going to take that space. His space is going to be fully operational. I think it's going to be a better use. And I got a feeling that cannabis is going to be a much more stable and long-term tenant than restaurants. So he may end up coming back and turning in the whole space into cannabis. Who knows? But I'm really glad I welcome the growth. I think, Golden State is great. I don't have a problem with what they're proposing. I definitely approve that. I don't have anything other issue than getting the city, on the not the mend, but on the way of improving it. So that's all I have.
Okay, great. Commissioner Chafe, I'm going to call on commissioners and just go through since we're on Zoom.
Thank you, Commissioner Keller, for the background. This is really helpful. So I don't have a lot to add. I mean, I think that the sidewalks are really important, and this is new background to me. So I do feel conflicted because of the financial situation, but I do feel like it's a necessary improvement. I have one question, and I don't know if anyone can answer this right now, which is that I know that there are going to be some changes in that general area because of proposed quiet zone work near the railroads. Does anyone know if that's going to change any of the conditions related to the sidewalk or to access through 66th Street?
I don't know exactly where it is in the process, but I believe that the arrangement that has been worked out with the railroad is that the crossings at 65th and 67th would become quiet zones, meaning no gates and full gates rather, and no train horns. And the crossing at 66th will be closed so that 66th from Hollis westward would become a cul-de-sac. That's my understanding right now of where it would be right now.
Okay, that's helpful. I guess one other question, and again, this is me being a relatively new commissioner. Are there any other proposed or expected sidewalk improvements along the same block that we know of?
None that I'm aware of.
No, okay. And the sidewalk, just to clarify, the sidewalk does not continue at all. Like there's no sidewalk on that north side of 66 for the whole block?
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, can I say something? Sure. Where the cars park parallel, somebody poured a curb, like a ramp to marry the curb. There is an existing sidewalk that's there. It's just, it's got that curb poured. The curb is been poured over, so it's like a ramp. And it's been there since I've been building in 98. And then there is a sidewalk that's there, but it's just not connected. It stops because the property next door is recessed and they use all that space for parking. So it's kind of like never really been a sidewalk, but was a sidewalk maybe at some point, but it was always used as parking that way, all the way down the block. Kind of like the history of the building.
And the other thing on my mind right now is just the safety aspects of the way that the cars are parking perpendicular to the buildings right now, and any new access points or new travel points into the building that are proposed here, and whether a sidewalk might help with making that situation safer.
I feel like a sidewalk would actually interfere with, and I don't even want to say this, if you park a car right there, the way the trucks take that turn, they multiple times they just have smashed the car that's parked right there in the last spot. Like it's kind of consistent. So if there was a car parked there parallel, the truck would hit that. It pushes it way out into the center of the road. I'm not an engineer. I don't know. I just have watched all the accidents that have happened on 66 and Hollis in the past 20 years. It's just been a constant amount of accidents there.
Okay.
Is the plan here requesting cars parked parallel to the building on the inside of the sidewalk?
No,
They will park parallel.
They will.
There's a curb, and so we'll no longer have where you pull into the building. We'll be parallel along the street, and I think that's part of also what is unattractive is it reduces the amount of parking that can be.
I do know. Yeah, I do know that. I've been hearing a lot about the $7 an hour to park there. They're pretty shook up. I definitely understand the city, needs to generate revenue however possible. Although I do think that limiting the parking at that building, maybe if there was some decrease in the Emery Tech cost, but it's at $135 a month. My staff can't most likely.
Chair, I want to bring this back to the commission's discussion.
Yeah.
I think the city is going away from creating parking for cars. That the cost is actually not to generate revenue; it's to steer people to alternate transportation.
That's
as well. Yeah, so let's bring this back to the commission if we can.
Yeah, I mean, this is I don't want to get segued onto, talking about parking when this is really an application for an adjustment to a conditional use permit. But this was tied to the original use permit application, and I think that's Commissioner Keller's point. I did want to keep going with the commissioner comments. I wanted to make sure that Commissioner Chafe was completed before moving on to Commissioner Mendez.
Yeah, thank you.
Chair Thompson, if I may, just to emphasize Commissioner Keller's point, this is the time for commission deliberations, and the chair is in charge of the meeting, and anybody else who wishes to address the commission should request the chair's permission to do so. Thank you.
And on that, thank you, Charlie. On that, Commissioner Mendez?
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't really see an issue with growing into that space. If it helps the owner and if it helps the business, I go to Rotten City a lot, and I would love to see that place there for a very long time. And I do understand what Commissioner Keller is saying. That street is not the best or most walkable street. I try to, whenever I go to Rotten City, I never walk down that street because of the lack of sidewalks. But I'm a little conflicted in requiring this as a condition of approval, since it was originally, I guess the way it originally was kind of stated was that if it was a third tenant. And I get it, I understand the entire area is being leased, and so maybe that should have been worded differently. Maybe there should have been a square footage, but the point is the condition was the third tenant. Now I'm wondering if we could somehow come to like a middle ground where we could say maybe within 5 years, if the sidewalk can be improved, so that we give like a timeline. So, right now it's hard times, COVID, and a lot of businesses are failing. They're not bringing in the same income. And so for us to require that of Jonas right now, I feel like it's a little bit unfair, especially when the condition was the third tenant. So I'm just wondering if that could be something that we could maybe, come into agreement where there's like a longer timeline set, and then they have the opportunity to work towards that timeline. But that's my only comment. Commissioner or Chair Thompson, I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry, kids behind me. All right, thank you very much. Vice Chair Young.
I really don't have any questions. Just generally, I think just move forward, see how this pans out. But I have no additional questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Simons.
Hi, everyone. So I think I have no concerns about this project. I think it seems great. I think on the sidewalk issue, the best time to do the sidewalk was 3 years ago. The second best time is today. And sometimes you need to set a goal and a timeline to really make things happen. 5 years feels a little long for me, but maybe sidewalk has to be installed within 2 years or something like that. I'd love to hear what other commissioners think about that. But I think we're all believers in sidewalks here, and the way you build a sidewalk down a block is in Emeryville, you used to do it one section at a time. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that important goal.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Zefko.
Yeah. I think that the comments made by the other commissioners have been really valid. To speak to Commissioner Mendez's point about the 3 years, I guess my question there, just from like a legal perspective, is like, why was the language tied to the third tenancy, and what does that language look like in order to give us insights around why that might be important? Is there somebody else that was on the commission at that time that can give me insight into that?
It's pretty hard to hear you, but
I apologize. I said that, is there somebody that was on the commission at the time that this was approved that can give me insight into why you predicated the condition amongst by having like a third tenant? My gut instinct says it would have been that by adding the third tenant, you're looking at what their use policies would have required like for that business. And that's why you predicated it upon that. But I'm not quite sure because I wasn't here for when you originally put that together.
So Charlie, I have a question for you. My understanding of it was that that was related to a third tenant because that would be full occupancy. I don't know if you can clarify, but I think that the idea was if there was one tenant, as this is shown, it would not be full. If there were two tenants, it would not be full, and by the third tenant, it would be full. And so I think that to me is sort of a primary question of the commission of full tenancy versus three tenants. But I don't know if there's any clarification there from a staff side.
My recollection is that this was the deliberations of the commission, and this was what the commission came up with. Perhaps Miru has a better recollection than I do, but I don't think the staff has any strong feeling about it one way or the other. I don't recall that this was anything staff recommended. I believe it came from the commission. So Miru, do you have any additional recollections about that?
It was essentially, the idea was to give the ownership some time for the businesses to get installed and get vibrant, and basically give Jonas some time before he has to do this. So that was really the deliberation.
But it came from the commission, did it not?
Yes, it did. It was not initiated by staff. It was deliberated at the commission, much the same way we are deliberating right today.
Okay.
Well, then I have no further questions, but thank you so much.
Okay, great. So it comes back to me, and my only comments were, I think, very similar to Commissioner Keller's in sort of recognizing that this was part of the original application. That we are looking at doing an adjustment to that conditional use permit. So this is now a topic of conversation. I don't have any opposition to the reconfiguration of the space. I actually think it's positive to not cross the circulation paths. It's for me it was a little bit strange going out on the public sidewalk, but I think staff raised that they did not consider it an issue, and I think there are clear discussion points about making sure that the cannabis activities are separated from other businesses. So I think it's a good solution for an existing condition, and I'm glad that it fits the operational procedures needed for the success of the other business. So I think the question now comes back to a vote with conditions if we want to address the sidewalk and talk about that in terms of the conditions. But before us, and correct me if I'm wrong, Maru, is really a question of whether we would approve the adjustment to the conditional use permit or not.
Yes.
So if I can, Chair?
Yep.
So I don't have any problem with the project as proposed. And I believe, as several commissioners had suggested, is that we put in a time frame. And I think a time frame is going to be the best way to get the sidewalk issue. I think 5 years, consider we're already 3 years into this. Another 5 years is too long. But I also understand we need to give Golden Gate time to settle into their space, do their construction, and give Jonas time to kind of recoup and reestablish his business. So I would like to suggest maybe 3 years from today's date that the sidewalks have to at least be permitted and under construction, and that it is also a condition that would be transferable to any new owner of the property. So if Jonas would need to close his business and sell the whole property, that the new owner understands they're picking up that responsibility and that same timeline.
I don't know that that's necessary, if I may, Chair Thompson.
Yeah, go ahead.
It may be, there may be some mechanism you wish to add to make sure the new owner is informed of this, but the conditional use permit runs with the land.
Okay, that's fine.
So, if it gets sold, the new owner will inherit all of the conditions.
Great. Okay. So how do the fellow commissioners feel of 3 years from today?
I personally don't think that's bad. I think 3 years makes a little bit, in my opinion. I think it gives Jonas the chance to build. I mean, I would love to see his business stay alive. I mean, Rotten City is one of my favorite places to get pizza, and I prefer it over than losing a fantastic business here in Emeryville. Personally, I am feeling that maybe if I could just open a motion to actually set it to 3 years, I mean, if somebody wants to go ahead and start writing that up, I'd be happy to put that up there.
Yeah, I think I would also support that as a restart, in the sense that we set the first 3 years associated with trying to establish businesses. COVID's been a hit to businesses. This is in ways a restart, and some businesses are doing well, and it's great to be able to support them in that endeavor. So in terms of making an official motion, what's the mechanism?
Chair Thompson, if I may?
Yes.
I'd just like to point out that there are two conditions that are tied to the third operating permit. And one is regarding the sidewalk construction, and the other is the loading zone. So it would make sense to change both of them to that.
Miru, simultaneously though too, at the same time, right? So they wouldn't have to come back and do the other one. So this is a simultaneous. Okay. This is a simultaneous thing. Okay.
Okay. So I think at this time that the commission's recommendation is to change it to. So it's a timeline rather than a third tenant of 3 years. Mm-hmm. But that as a condition of this approval, a continuation of the other approval, but then to move forward with the vote.
Chair, just one more clarification. I'm sorry.
Sure, Maru. Yep.
So the loading zone, we have to be clear in our language that we are timing the 3 years to completion of the work. So, be completion, so to have the loading zone installed. So the actual work, in order to install a loading zone, they need permission from the Transportation Committee, from the City Council. So I'm just trying to make sure that we are clear.
So Maroon, my suggestion was that we don't make it completed. We make it that the permits are pulled and construction has started. It doesn't have to be completed within 3 years, but we'll give them time, a little extra time, but they need to pull the permits and get the process for constructing the sidewalk and the loading zone within 3 years from today. Is that understandable?
Yep.
Does that give you enough time, do you think?
Once you pull the permits to be able to get the sidewalk up and running.
Sorry. So Maru, are you clear on what Commissioner Keller was saying?
It seems to me that Commissioner Keller is saying that 3 years, starting from 3 years from today, the applicant or the ownership should apply, should have an encroachment permit applied for an encroachment permit for the sidewalk construction and applied for the yellow loading zone in 3 years.
Correct.
Okay. Yes. And then there was a question, Commissioner Zepko.
Oh, how long does it take, soup to nuts, once you get it approved? And should it be more that the permit has been approved by the 3 years, even if it hasn't been installed?
Well, this is a condition of approval, so it would be a local building permit pull, right?
So Chair Thompson,
yes.
If I could just help explain the process that the city goes through when certain public improvements are delayed beyond the completion of the project. In our standard conditions of approval, there is language about how prior to the issuance of a building permit, that the Public Works Director and the applicant will enter into an improvement agreement for the design, construction, and inspection of certain public improvements. In this case, it would be the loading zone and the sidewalk. And we enter into that agreement either before building permit issuance or C of O. And what happens is that the applicant then has to bond for those improvements. And then the agreement can spell out the time frame for completing the improvements, or alternatively, sometimes the commission or the city council will set the benchmark for when they need to be completed. But by putting it into an improvement agreement, we don't necessarily need to figure out those the nuts and bolts tonight. That gets done in the agreement. So,
okay.
But the one question is I'm not quite certain, they're going to need a building permit, correct, Miru?
That's correct. By there, you mean Golden State to make
Yes.
tenant improvements, yes.
Yes. So we could use our standard condition and tweak it a little bit to capture the time frame that the commission is concerned about. And we would enter into that agreement before the building permit.
So if I can, Chair, just to get some clarification.
Go ahead, Commissioner Keller.
So I don't want the building permit for Golden State to be held up by the sidewalk permit. So is what you're saying tying those two together in any way?
No, what it is it's an agreement that says that the applicant will do this work by a certain time frame. And our security is what's called a performance bond.
Okay.
So if for some reason they don't perform, we have a bond that allows the city to go in and perform the work.
Sounds great.
But the improvement agreement, typically our standard language says that it's prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall enter into an improvement agreement, et cetera, et cetera. So it would hold up the Golden State building permit until this improvement agreement were entered into.
But the agreement could be entered into, but the agreement could state that it could be 3 years from now that the improvement begins. Yeah. Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't get the building permit issued until this improvement agreement was entered into.
And that's not a long process that should hold up Golden State in any inordinate amount of time, right?
We have a fairly standard improvement agreement.
Okay.
Okay.
The chair may want to check in with the applicant to see if this.
Sure. So yes. So I think the official approach right now at this time is to move forward with a motion and take a vote on it, but that would have this caveat in it, that there would be a 3-year time duration. There would be an agreement that would be entered into before pulling the building permit, but that would be the parameters of something we could bring forward and vote on. And so is that clear to the applicant?
Yes, it is clear to me, and I am okay with the 3-year period of time. I don't think it should be tied to Golden State Cannabis at all. I'm the business owner. I'm the building owner. I will pull the permit to do the work, so he can just go ahead and get his operating permit. If the work is tied to me, and I have a 3-year time frame on it, is that possible?
So the way it would work is it is tied to the cannabis business pulling their building permit because it's their use permit that's in front of the commission tonight.
Got it.
Right. That the improvement agreement would be with you as the owner.
Perfect. And then that will give me full disclosure to anybody, and everything transfers with the property. So if I were to sell the property, that would be disclosed immediately. Plus the drawings that I already presented to you guys were approved, correct, Miru?
That is correct.
So all I would have to do is just go to just get the permit. But if I can't pull a permit now and then wait 3 years, correct? It's not something that's... No. So it has to just be done within that time frame.
Right.
Okay. I'm clear.
Andrea, can you explain the bond, bond system to Jonas? I want to make sure he's clear on that.
Yes, I can. Well, I can provide a very basic level. What it is with, you would be required to provide a bond to the city that is going to cost you money. Typically, what the city requires is there will be an estimate of the cost of the improvement. So in this case, it would be an estimate of the cost of putting the sidewalk in the loading zone. And then usually Public Works adds a percentage on top of that, so that if we go in to do the work, it covers our administrative cost. And so then you would have to go to a surety company and buy the bond, and the bond is given to us. And then once you do the work, the city releases the bond. So there is a cost to you. I have no idea what that cost is, because we're always on the other side of receiving the bond.
It's based off the work, the volume of work.
My understanding, it's based off of the cost of the improvement.
And is that bond asked to be given when the permit is pulled, when the work starts, or upon the agreement?
We would require that you provide us the bonds when you execute the agreement, which has to be before the building permit is issued.
Before the building permit is issued. So that would mean, so say in 2 years I go, okay, I'm ready to do the work. Here I go. I want to get the building permit. The agreement would then come into play. I would then have the bond. And
not quite. So let's say Golden Gate wants to pull their permit in July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So sometime before July 1st, the city and you as the owner, we would have to enter into this project improvement agreement. And so let's say the cost of the improvements is, $50,000. You would have to give us a bond for that $50,000 before July 1st, when they go to pull the building permit.
But the bond doesn't cost $50,000, right?
No, the bond does not cost $50,000. It costs a percentage of that $50,000. I don't know enough about bonding to be able to give you an idea of what the cost of the bond would be.
So basically, when Lewis goes to pull the building permit, I'm going to have to get the proposal and a quote on this job.
Exactly.
It may not be done for 3 years.
Exactly.
All right. There's no other way around it.
That was one suggestion for how the city normally deals with deferred public improvements.
What Andrea is referring to is standard language that is out of our standard conditions of approval for most planning projects.
Now, if I may, if Jonas wants a little bit more time to get this agreement in place, then the commission could consider that this agreement be entered into before Lewis gets his certificate of occupancy on the second floor. So that would give Jonas a little bit more time.
Yeah, I was thinking that route, as I was going to suggest that myself, because it means that they enter into the long-term agreement after Lewis has finished his work. So it gives them another 3 months or so before they have to buy the bond, so to speak, in simple terms.
I have no problem getting a quote, figuring out how much the cost is, getting that in, and then getting a bond. I have no problem doing that. If I resell the building, that will be transferable to anybody else. It's not an issue. What I don't want is to have Lewis be held up by anything that I have to do with this parking.
Right.
Well, that's why deferring this to certificate of occupancy would give him more time and would minimize the amount of holdup for him.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I would agree that.
That's right.
Ultimately, I go ahead, I get a quote this week or next week, I get a quote, I get the information, I get a bond, I provide that to you guys. Then the work will have to be done within 3 years from that point, from today. correct?
Right.
Lewis can operate as soon as the building department comes in, does their inspection, and says you're good to go.
No, you're kind of getting a little bit confused. The thing is there's 2 times where you would have to get the bond. It's either before Jonas gets his permit or before he gets his certificate to operate. So there's, depending on how fast he does this work, there's like 3 months would be the standard that you would have to do it.
All right.
So,
I have no problem getting the bond within 3 months if that's that gets Lewis operating as fast as possible. That's
right. But I just want you to understand he can't operate without a certificate of occupancy. He could do his improvements, but he can't operate till he has a certificate of occupancy, which means you have to enter into this agreement and buy the bond before that gets issued.
That's fine.
Yeah. No.
So I'll get a quote on the work, and I'll get that. I'll follow the proper channels. Who do I follow up with, and where do I make mirror? Okay.
Yeah. Maru's your staff contact.
Yeah.
So, Chair Thompson,
yeah.
If I may just read the language that we have crafted here, and giving credit where credit is due, which our Assistant City Attorney has crafted here. Says improvement agreement. Prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, applicant shall enter into an improvement agreement with the City of Emeryville to ensure the faithful performance of the design, construction, inspection, and installation of all public improvements, and those public improvements are identified in the other condition of approval. Within 3 years of the effective date of this approval, secured by good and sufficient surety bond or cash deposit, adequate to cover all of the costs, inspections, and administrative expenses of completing such improvement in the event of a default. So if you follow, that's what ensures the work will be done.
Sounds good to me, and I would make a motion that we approve with that condition.
Thank you, Commissioner Keller. Is there someone who would like to second it?
I'll go ahead and second it.
I think Commissioner Chafe was the first on that one.
All right. Moved by Commissioner Keller and seconded by Commissioner Chafe. Commissioner Chafe?
Aye.
Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Mendez?
Aye.
Commissioner Simons?
Aye.
Commissioner Zepko?
Aye.
Vice Chair Young?
Aye.
And Chair Thompson?
Aye.
7 ayes, the application is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
Thank you, Lewis. Thank you, Jonas.
Thank you, Lewis. Thank you, Jonas.
Thank you, Jonas. Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you, everybody.
Keep making good pizza, man. That's all I care about.
What about the weed?
I'll bring my own beer. How about that?
Well, maybe there'll be a point where you guys will let me deliver weed and pizza at the same time, and then
I think that's more the state than us.
Business plan.
We need some money.
Wait till Taco Bell takes your business plan.
All right. So thank you. And we do have something else on the agenda, so we have to move on to our next study session. So the study session is for the 3637 Adeline Supportive Housing Project. And there a presentation?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, so this is a study session for a supporting housing project on Adeline Street. This is the location. You've Adeline here, MacArthur, West MacArthur Boulevard, and the site is about 0.29 acres, and there's an existing under 6,000 square feet, one-story building that is there. The proposal is to demolish the existing building and build 90-unit rental housing project in a 7-story building. It would be 100% affordable, and it would be for households with special needs who are either homeless or at risk of homelessness. So this is the existing site plan, and what they are proposing is this. So at the ground floor uses, the lobby is off Adeline Street, whereas the vehicular parking as well as loading is off West MacArthur Boulevard. This corner space is being right now proposed as a commercial use or additional community rooms for the facility. You have indoor bike parking as well as community rooms, community kitchen, and a garden and open space along here. In terms of the unit mix, what is being proposed is a mix of studios and one bedroom with 74% being studios and 26% being one bedroom units. The second floor plan consists of a lounge at this corner, a manager's unit at this corner, and then 13 studios, which are in green, and 2 one bedrooms. Between floors 3 to 5, again, lounge, there's a lounge on each floor, and the remaining are 12 studios and 4 one bedrooms. At the 6th floor, again, you have a lounge, you have studios and 4 one bedrooms, and the building is set in to create a roof deck at level 6. And at level 7, there is an additional inset of the building and a roof deck. And at that level, you have a lounge, 8 studios, and 4 one bedroom. So looking at the building sections gives you an idea of how the building has been set inwards. The height of the building will be 78 feet 6 inches. And this is the view from Adeline MacArthur looking southwest. Obviously, the plan has not yet been fully developed, so you don't quite know the various skin materials and windows and things like that, and articulations. So in terms of review and approval process, the applicant, MBS, has indicated that they intend to apply for planning approval under the state SB 35, which mandates ministerial approval. That means no discretionary standards apply. And under AB 1763, which specifies no density limits for projects within half a mile of transit, which this project is. What this means is that this proposal would have no commission or council review that would be required. However, the applicant wishes to obtain comments from the Planning Commission as well as with the city's housing committee, as the applicant intends to apply for Measure C housing bond monies under the Affordable Housing Bond Administration and Expenditure Plan that was approved by the council earlier this month. Under this plan, the Measure C bonds will be issued in 2 tranches. The first tranches will be issued next spring, 2020, and the second one will be in winter of 2025. So the proposal meets the qualifying criteria that are outlined by these 2 bills. So it means that no use permit is required, and that the design review is permissible only if it is based on objective standards. The proposal is also eligible for 4 incentives concessions. There's no limit on density, and it is eligible for a 3-story or 33 feet height increase. And it is also eligible for unlimited number of waivers. In terms of what are incentives and concessions, that could mean reduction in site development standards such as setbacks, FAR, parking requirements. It could also mean modification of other standards that result in identifiable and actual cost reductions to provide the affordable housing and the density at which it is being proposed. Difference between waivers versus concessions. Waivers focus on physical limitations, while incentives and concessions focus on cost. And so how does this work with the city regulations? So typically any project that exceed our base density, FAR, and our height require development bonus points. And they must be approved through a discretionary conditional use permit process in front of the Planning Commission. However, because of SB 35, this project will be considered ministerial, which means that there are no findings to be made and no conditions of approval may be imposed. A ministerial approval is based on a yes or no analysis of the project's compliance with development standards. If the project complies with standards, it is approved. If it does not comply, it is not approved. So in terms of mechanism through which the city would do this is called a zoning compliance review. And that is the process we have for ministerial approvals. And this is the decision made by the Community Development Director. Now, the most challenging part of this is that the most of the city's design review guidelines and criteria are subjective, requiring some degree of personal judgment. Staff will identify design review criteria contained in the city documents, be it city guidelines, general plan, and other applicable policy documents that could be considered objective design review standards. This will happen once the proposal is fully developed and it obtains funding and is ready to move forward. So in terms of how it conforms with our regulations, it is in the mixed use with residential south MURS base zone, and it has a transit hub overlay zone on it. Multi-unit supportive housing, which is what is being proposed, is allowed by right in this zoning district. In terms of density, the base density in this area is 50 units per acre, with bonus density increasing to 100 units per acre. So for this site, which is 0.29 acres, this equates to 15 units base and 29 units with bonus. What is being proposed is 310 units per acre. Project is within half a mile of public transit, so there is no limit on density. FAR, it lies in the base FAR of 1.5 and bonus is 3.0. Proposed FAR is 5.3. The project requests a waiver as it would have the effect of precluding construction of the proposed density. Height, it is in the base height district of 40 feet and the bonus height of 75 feet. As I mentioned earlier, the project will be allowed an additional height of 3 stories or 33 feet above the base height, which brings it to 73 feet high. The proposal is 78.5 feet, so the applicant is also requesting a waiver as it would have the effect of precluding construction of the proposed density without the proposed height. Unit mix and family-friendly design. Our requirement is that 50% of the units need to be 2 and 3 bedrooms, of which 15 needs to be 3-bedroom units, and only 10% can be studios. The proposal, as I mentioned earlier, does not comply with our requirement, and the applicant is requesting an exemption, the unit mix ratio and the family-friendly design guidelines as one of the 4 concessions that is eligible under the state density bonus law. In terms of parking, the required is 0 to 51 spaces. What they're proposing is 2 ADA parking spaces and 3 regular spots. Bicycle parking, the requirement is 5 short-term and 90 long-term spaces. They're proposing 92 long-term in a secure bike space, which I showed earlier. They're not at the moment showing short-term, but that should really not be an issue as they have 2 frontages where they can easily install short-term bicycle parking. Open space. So for this site, the required private open space turns out to be 3,600 square feet, and the common open space turns out to be 1,800 square feet. Our regulations also allow a substitution for private open space at the rate of 2 to 1. So as this proposal does not seem to provide any private open space, they would need to then provide 9,000 square feet of common open space. And what they're proposing is 3,000 square feet of common open space, and that is combining the ground floor garden as well as the 2 roof decks that I showed you earlier. So the project is requesting a reduction in open space requirements as one of the concessions under the state density bonus law. In terms of staff comments, this was reviewed by our development coordinating committee, which consists of staff from different divisions, such as public works, building, fire, police, economic development. And the discussion again was more on the permitting processes under SB 35 and AB of 1763, and the limitations to providing feedback and conditions that we would normally request from a development of this kind. The building division has requested that the applicant set up a meeting to initiate conversations regarding various building code requirements related to ADA parking and other potential issues. So that concludes my presentation. I know that the applicant has a presentation and they may be showing you slightly different drawings with more details on it. So I will let them present that. But the issues that the commission needs to consider and provide feedback is just feedback regarding the overall project, feedback on proposed parking, amenities, usable open space, and the population that the proposal will be serving. And does the commission have any feedback on the concessions and the waivers of development standards requested by the applicant? So that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Maru. Are there any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Keller?
Yeah, Maru, I just wanted to ask about the commercial space. It's kind of something a little different in a project of this nature. That they would be providing a commercial space in an affordable housing unit. So would that commercial space be rented at a reduced affordable rate, or is that at market rate? And is that allowed by the state laws?
First of all, the commercial space is a proposal. They're saying it may be, it's not certain. They could, but the key thing is that the size that they're proposing, that is allowed by the state bills.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Great. Any other questions for Maru? Okay, great. Then if the applicant has a presentation, Charlie, did you want to say something?
Yes, no, I need to elevate them to the panel. And that would be Ali Kashani, correct, Miru? Is there anybody else?
I don't see anybody else that I recognize.
Okay,
maybe
wait a minute.
Ali Kashani.
Okay.
You may also want to elevate Adi Nagraj. He is officially the applicant.
I see Isaiah Stackhouse also. Does he need to be promoted?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Adi Nagraj with McCormick Barron Salazar.
Good evening. I'm Ali Koshani, project manager on this project and current property owner. And with us are Isaiah. You're right there. Introduce yourself.
You're muted. There you go.
Isaiah Stackhouse with Trachtenberg Architects.
Thank you, commissioners. Good evening. My name is Ali Koshani. I'm part owner of the current property. 3 years ago tonight, your commission unanimously approved my project, which complied with the city's planning requirements, went through 3 planning commission study sessions, and received approval for a 35-unit project, 5 stories at this location. Thereafter, we applied and received extensions, mainly because the rising construction costs were outpacing the feasibility of the project. In 2019, the tenant from whom we had bought the property left. So the building has been sitting vacant since then. We have an alarm system there. I drive by there, make sure there is no problems with the building. It's still intact. And in 2020, as you well know, 2 things happened. The Assembly Bill 1763 was passed, which changed the potential capacity for development of this project as an affordable project. And also the Measure C expenditure plan was put together and went to your city council. I've been working with McCormick Barron Salazar on a couple of other projects in Northern California, and they expressed interest in the site. And Isaiah's team has put together a very, very nice design. And we decided that a pre-application and a work study would be a better way to go than to do a full application and have no input from the Planning Commission under SB 35. We watched your comments on the project at 3600 San Pablo, and we thought they were very helpful, and they really improved that project and made Charlie's job a lot easier to approve that project. So we are pleased to have this opportunity to present to you tonight. Audie will present the MBS team and the organization, and we'll go from there to Isaiah, who's the project designer. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ali. Hi, everyone. Again, Adi Nagraj, Senior Vice President of McCormick Barron Salazar. I just want to highlight 2 points that have been made. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. First is that we are seeking to house an unsheltered community. Of course, we're all aghast and certainly upset about the conditions that we're seeing on the streets and the number of folks who are not able to afford housing now. And we really want to help address that through our project to see if we can certainly house a number of folks that need it in the Bay Area. And two, to emphasize that point that for the projects that affordable housing projects I'm working on around the Bay Area, even if SB 35 or other state laws don't mandate working with the local planning commission and local stakeholders, I always feel that's super important to ensure that we are developing a project that is that incorporates all the feedback from the key stakeholders and the experts, which are you. So thank you for this time. I should also say I recently rolled off the Oakland Planning Commission after serving 6 years, 2 years as chair. So I applaud your service and your late nights, and welcome to the new commissioners. And I'm enjoying my newfound freedom of being off commission. Just a word about McCormick Barron Salazar. We're a large national company. We've developed about 20,000 units of housing, roughly two thirds affordable, a third market rate. We specialize on a lot of different populations. Certainly low-income families is one, but recently, recently given the uptick of in homelessness around the country, we're doing a lot more 100% homeless special needs buildings around the country with deep social services and property management services as well. Around the Bay Area, we've been around the Bay Area for about 20 years with affordable housing projects in Richmond, Oakland, and San Francisco. I myself am local. I live pretty close to the site at around San Pablo and Stanford. So the site is kind of on my walk. I've got 2 young kids, and when we walk around the neighborhood, we pass by. And I have a lot of affordable housing experience. Spent most of my career at Bridge Housing, where I co-ran Northern California Development for Bridge. I'm on the board of the California Housing Partnership Corporation, which is a finance agency that helps finance affordable housing. And recently, I was appointed by the treasurer to serve on the tax credit, tax exempt bond working group. And I only mention that because for the first time in about 15 years, tax exempt bonds that fund affordable housing are competitive. And our working group has had to kind of relook from a state level as to what are the types of projects we want this limited resource of tax exempt bonds to fund, given that there are a lot more projects than bonds available. And projects that serve 100% special needs or homeless populations are one of the priorities at the state level. And so I feel very confident that from kind of a competitive financing perspective, a project such as this would be compelling from the state perspective. So I'm going to hand it over to Isaiah, where we'd like to share where we are in our thinking. We welcome your feedback. We have kind of toyed with the plans and actually looking at reducing the height and kind of stepping the building down in a ways that the plans previously submitted to staff do not reflect. So we kind of want to show you, the main proposal that was presented by staff, and then potentially an alternative, and get your feedback generally on the plans and certainly advice on the two different alternatives. So if it's okay with that, I'll hand it over to Isaiah if he could share his screen to start the review.
Yeah, great. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
You can.
Okay.
Be sure to be loud enough. It's not that easy to hear you.
Okay, will do. Well, nice to be here with you tonight to review our project. Again, I'm Isaiah Stackhouse of Trachtenberg Architects, and thank you, Maru, for a very good, thorough presentation already. SB 35 project, 90 units, supportive housing, 7 stories, which will show you may get reduced. Context, with several other newly built affordable projects in the immediate area. Existing plan with the existing building to be replaced. And the ground level plan, so we're proposing to put the lobby on Adeline, and then to have offices, a multi-purpose room, a kitchen, and community room, all gathered around outdoor garden space that will get very good southern and western light. I think these will all be very nice spaces and will feel larger being attached to garden spaces, which are, we think, very important. And moving around to West MacArthur, there's a loading zone, and then a garage, and then a corner space, which as mentioned, maybe additional community rooms, or there's a chance that it could go commercial. And if you have any thoughts on that, we'd love to hear them. Moving up to the second floor, there is a 2-bedroom manager's unit that stacks underneath the typical floor plan here, which is a mix of studio units that are in the range of 400 square feet and 1-bedroom units that are around 575 square feet. Each floor does have a lounge, laundry, public bathroom, trash chutes in the building, and 2 elevators and 2 stairs as required by code. Up at level 6, the building starts to step back at the west to create additional outdoor community space, and also to step down the massing. And then up at the 7th floor, it steps back again to create a second deck. Here's an image. You can see the step downs at the west. There'd be a community rooms at the corner. One of the issues that we're looking at now as we get further into detail is that the 7-story building is most efficiently, cost efficiently constructed out of 5 floors of wood, which is a maximum, over 2 floors of concrete. And what that means is that the 2nd floor units would all be built in concrete and would be far more expensive to build than if they were wood. Again, the height would be 78.5 feet. But what we're looking at and potentially leaning towards is stepping the building down a full floor to keep it at 6 stories, so that all of the units could be built out of wood construction, 5 stories of wood over the single floor podium with the community rooms, and it would reduce the height to about 68.5 feet, and it would reduce the unit count to 74 units with 1 floor missing. The unit floor plans would all be identical to what you've seen and what we've shown you tonight. The only change would be simply eliminating the floor. We'd keep the 2 step downs towards the west. And so it would go from looking like this to looking like that, just being a story lower. One other issue we're looking at is the parking on the ground floor. We're looking at potentially, with there being 5 spaces there, potentially if we were to reduce that a little further, then we could move the bike room from this location on Adeline over to replace some parking. We'd end up with 2 ADA parking stalls still the loading zone, and we might get additional room for support spaces across the front of the project. So if you have any feedback on that, we'd be very interested to hear that. Thank you. That concludes our presentation, and we look forward to your comments.
Yeah, and obviously we've been continuing to fine tune the design. We do welcome comments on height, bulk, on parking, the open space, amenities, art, just all feedback, and then certainly kind of the two different options. All feedback is welcome.
Okay, thank you for the presentation, Isaiah, Adi. And are there any questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Mendez?
Yeah, so I had a question about the community rooms. So is there a community room on each floor? And, okay, yeah. So there's a lounge. So does that continue up on every floor, or?
Yeah, that is currently proposed on every floor. So there'd be laundry on every floor and a lounge on every floor. So, you know, in addition to the shared gathering spaces off the garden on the ground level. So the ground level spaces, and then each floor. So on a typical full floor, there are 16 units. And they would share the corner lounge, as well as have access to the ground level community spaces.
Okay.
And, sorry, if I could add, part of that is feedback that we've received from our property management and services folks, especially for special needs housing, to have, as opposed to having folks kind of all take the elevator and go down to the first floor, to have kind of a recreation, relaxing area, that there should be space on each of the floors. So it incorporates some of the feedback we've gotten on the other special needs projects we've developed.
Okay, and then just a follow-up question to that. Is there, I know this is really early development, but is there maybe talks about making one of these community rooms like a fitness center or anything like that?
We haven't had those discussions, but certainly are open to programming that however is most appropriate and kind of what the needs of the population are. I'm certainly open to a fitness center.
I just want to add that the plan that Isaiah is showing, which reduces the parking, and instead moves the bicycle parking to MacArthur, and creates additional space in the building to program, that would allow for creation of a fitness center.
Okay, thank you very much. That was it for me.
Okay, Commissioner Simons?
Hello, thanks so much for taking my questions. So I have a couple of questions. First about unit mix. I see it's basic, are the one bedroom apartments, those slightly larger units, are those designed for one person or for two? I know we take very seriously, you know, trying to make apartments for bigger families. Obviously, this is kind of a unique situation. And then do we know that, you know, 90% of people experiencing homelessness are single? I just want to make sure we're actually serving the community the best we can here.
We have made the one bedrooms large enough at 575 square feet that allows for a two-person household to live, or maybe even a family with one child could live in those units. So we are not building this project as a family project, rather a homeless project that could accommodate individuals as well as small families.
Got it. And then so at the end of your presentation, you have some numbers. And I just think I'd love to see in the future, I know the cost of construction is incredibly high in the Bay Area. And I think it's important for those of us in the Planning Commission to like really look at it, to really realize what we're dealing with. Could you just like put the cost per unit, just break that out? One unit costs $700,000. and then, or whatever it is, and then say how much City of Emeryville is contributing per unit, and then how much all Californians or all Americans are contributing per unit, just so we really see what we're dealing with. I think that would be useful as well.
Sure.
Audie, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that now, but we can certainly in the future do that. As you suggest, cost of construction is high and rising, and we're not seeing any relief from the COVID recession. We're seeing subs and GCs are as busy as ever. I would say that our material and lumber costs for some reason are massively escalating right now. We're all paying a lot for wood. So that's kind of on the cost side, that there are a lot of challenges we're having. On the sources, or on the sources we need to build the building, you're right. We're certainly hoping for city resources to help us to support. Of course, all the projects in housing people who have very little or no incomes. Each of the projects is going to need each of the units will need some subsidy. So whether that's a project-based Section 8, whether that's Alameda County Measure W, or whether there's another source that can come and help subsidize the cost to operate that unit. And then certainly the main dollars comes in through the low-income housing tax credit program and allocation of tax credits that are then sold to an investor. And those have to be paired with tax-exempt bonds, and it's those bonds that are competitive for the first time. But we can certainly, for future presentations, kind of rough out what those numbers would be in the different options.
What I wanted to add to Audie's remarks is we haven't yet priced this project. So we're using similar cost with other projects, and we've looked at projects that are going through funding and building in Emeryville, and this project will be well within those margins and lower, is what we can tell you. Yeah.
And a quick question of clarification in terms of the process, because clearly this is a question of providing additional information. Will this come back to us? I don't know if the staff can answer that.
So we have asked to come to you and get your feedback, and then potentially go before the housing committee and get their feedback. And based on what we hear, and depending on your wishes, we'll be happy to bring it back for an additional study session before we do the full application.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure if we are asking you to do things, that we'd then be able to see them again.
If I may, Chair Thompson, there's no mechanism in place right now that requires the applicant to come back before the Planning Commission. If they were to proceed under SB 35, that would be a ministerial permit, as Miru explained earlier. The reason why we've had 3600 San Pablo Avenue come before the Planning Commission is because the city has provided funding for the project, and as part of the loan documents, they were required to come before the Planning Commission and the City Council for input. So unless there is that mechanism there, or if they decide to proceed under our normal planning entitlement process, there's no requirement that the project come before the Planning Commission again.
Is that something that we would be able to include?
Tonight is just a study session.
Okay.
There's no action being taken by the commission.
Right. So I guess I just wanted the commissioners to be prepared for, come what may. There is no requirement at this time. There will not be any requirement.
That is correct at this time.
Okay. But obviously the applicant has offered, so we should acknowledge that as well. So thank you.
Yes, and it was similar to 3600 San Pablo, where they proceeded under SB 35, but there's a lot of benefit to going through this process and having eyes on the project and to call out, certain things that maybe somebody didn't think of, or bring a different perspective. So
okay.
It is a helpful process.
Okay, great. So this is the questions portion. Are there any other questions for the applicant or the presenter?
Chair Thompson, I have a question.
Sure, Commissioner Chase, go ahead.
I also had a similar question about the rationale for the unit mix, which I think was partially answered, but just to clarify a bit more. So is it envisioned that some families with one child might be housed here, or is that not really intended?
Under kind of financing guidelines, we can have the number of occupants in each unit can be your bedroom plus one. So for a 1 bedroom, we could have a max of 2 people in the apartment. Yeah.
Okay, but you're not building in any, you're not anticipating building in any part of the facility to cater to families at this time?
That's right. There's no like play structure or play areas for children, right?
Okay, great. And then the roof decks and outdoor space. So it's great to see that you were able to put in some outdoor space. I'm also on the Parks and Recreation Committee for the city. And one thing that we've talked a lot about recently is that this part of Emeryville just doesn't have as much open space as other parts of the city. And taking into account the fact that there are several big developments happening here potentially at the same time and really increasing the, the population of this part of the city, I just wanted to check in about the intended use. So the roof decks, I know that when we talked to the applicants for 3600 San Pablo, they expressed some hesitation about opening up roof spaces to occupants. And I was just wondering what your experiences have been working in this field, and whether you think that, or how you would envision the roof decks being used.
I have a different opinion. I feel like the more open space we can allow for our residents, the better. We'll of course make it safe and secure and all that stuff, but I think the roof deck is going to be one of the best amenities of the project, and I would hate to build it and allow staff but not the residents to go up there. So no, I see it differently. I would want our tenants to be able to enjoy that view.
And what actually will be on the roof, like the top of the, say, 7th floor, if it's built up to the 7th floor?
At the very top, we would have solar and mechanical, and elevator overrun and one stair going up there. But it would be sort of maintenance only area.
Okay, great. And then last question for me is on the bike spacing. So right now, has the number of bikes that you could fit in there been calculated based on the size of a typical bike, or does it take into account any trailers or cargo bikes, and might that change the number at all?
Currently, it's based on standard bikes in standard racks, and the 76 shown here is based on the smaller 6-story version with 74 units. So we could look at long tail, so we could find a way to accommodate that, but it's currently standard bikes in the standard like a SARS type double stacker bike racks.
Great, thank you.
Okay, are there other commissioner questions? Okay, I have a question for the applicant, specifically in terms of serving the population. What is the service plan? I mean, will there be people on site or not?
Yeah, so what we've typically done, and Ali and I have talked quite a bit about this, so I'll start, and Ali, you can add in as well, is partner with certainly a strong service provider. And so we've had some early discussions about BACS being a service provider partner here. And what we want to make sure that we do is to provide adequate support space, social services space for social services staff to be on site, having a few private rooms, having rooms for tenant files that are secured, but really having robust social services budget and people able to support the residents and kind of do intake and either direct services or third-party referrals. So yeah, so I think what we've learned definitely is, in all of this, with all the different pieces, no offense to our architect or myself, but the social service provider for a 100% homeless building is the most important part of the equation. Ali, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, we are, McCormick, Barron, Salzar and us are doing another project in Oakland, 80 unit project. And for that, we have a social services budget annually about $700,000 to provide on-site counseling, case managers and services full-time. We are relying on the generosity of Alameda County voters who passed Measure W, which will generate about $150 million a year for homeless housing and supportive services. The county will be doing RFPs on that, and we're planning to apply and secure funding for services for this project.
Yeah, and that's right. And serving this population, it informs the philosophy and principles of all of us, of McCormick, Barron, Salzar as owner, property manager, and social services. And, so some of the things that we've learned over the years, and I've learned in my career, right? My first 100% homeless building was in San Francisco in 2005. And even back then, we did kind of weekly owner, property management, and services meet every week and go through every single resident in the building and kind of do an assessment of that individual and who needs help, who doesn't, who's at risk of falling behind in rent and who's not. If incidents come up on site, if someone is behind on rent, how do we address it? Given that we know that this is the housing of last resort for all these folks. And if someone is not able to live here, then they end up on the street. So we do everything we can to ensure that we're providing all the services and support. And that management, property management, which sometimes can be perceived as the stick, and services, which is the carrot, that the two of them are working in concert together to ensure the safety and longevity for all the residents here. So that's the type of approach that we would come to this project with.
Okay, and I think that you presented sort of two options. One was some additional support space on the bottom floor. You've talked about maybe fitness. Would that also help the service provision, or do you really see that the offices that, the originally planned offices were sufficient, and so that really isn't a factor for the services?
What I always do is have more detailed conversations with our service provider on, given the number of people, what is the exact square footage you need? How many rooms do you recommend? So I don't feel informed enough to have an answer to that question.
Okay.
That'll be the type of question that we'll talk to our service provider about.
Okay. In terms of the outdoor space, I think the conversation that we had with the other applicant regarding outdoor space and not wanting to provide it was really about health concerns around the highway and the amount of the sort of the intensity of the spaces that are around the roads and the emissions associated with those roads. Do you have any of those concerns?
Of residents being in the outdoor space or on the roof deck and being exposed to pollutants from the road?
Yeah, I think that was the thrust of some of the conversation.
I don't know. That's a good question. It's a hard one for me to answer.
Yeah, and I think if that isn't present in the conversation, that's fine. I just wanted to sort of also just communicate that had been the conversation with the other owner.
Yeah, it's hard for a lot of these developments. We often hear, especially kind of in a more urban context where there's higher density, we hear, hey, can we have some relief on the outside? Whether it's open space on the ground floor, on the rooftop. So I definitely hear the concern, and it's something that we can keep in mind and certainly balance it with a lot of tenants that we talk to saying, we just want a little bit of breathable space.
Yeah, no, and I think in general the commission was supportive of outdoor space, so wanted to see that integrated into the other project. So I think in general, I think we would just be interested if there was a countervailing viewpoint that we weren't aware of. So in general, though, very supportive of the open space.
Okay.
Hey, Thompson,
yep.
If I may add, I'm not an air quality expert, but pollutants around freeways have a lot of heavy molecules that fall. They don't stay up in the air. So we're providing the space up above about 60, 70 feet. And they're going to be heavily landscaped. So there will be fresh oxygen from the plants for people to hang around with. And I don't really understand the concern of the other group.
Yeah, okay. And then a question for the architect about the typical floor plate, the common bathroom. I wanted to just make sure I'm understanding the functionality of the floor plate. I mean, they're very economical units, very, very tight, and very, pretty straightforward. How do you see the common bathroom adding to this?
Really, that's something that you could use if you're, in the lounge or out on the, out on the roof deck, especially. You could come in here and not necessarily go back all the way to the unit. So it gives a little bit more flexibility. Also, if you say, for instance, you have a unit down on the 3rd floor, but you want to go up and use the roof deck, so you go up to the roof deck level and you can easily come in. There's a restroom there, or if you're, hanging out with a friend, you live on the 3rd floor and whatnot. It just offers a little more flexibility and convenience. That's the thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, and sorry, we were also considering for maintenance staff, or if someone from backs, walks up with a resident back to their apartment, to have other staff who are walking through the building be able to access the bathroom easily.
Okay. Those are my questions. Are there any other questions that have come up, Commissioner Keller?
Just when I'm looking at the corridors, and it looks like at the end of each corridor in the corners that those are daylighted, they have windows.
That is the intention, that there are, there are windows, so there is daylight to the corridors, all of the corridors.
Okay. Just want to make sure I was reading that right. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, great. Any other questions? I'm kind of scrolling through people, so feel free to yell if I'm missing you. Okay. So this is where I asked staff about the process here, because this isn't typical. Are we having the public comment?
Well, yes, this is a regular study session, even though it's not a discretionary project that will come back to the commission for a decision. It is a regular planning commission study session. And actually the public has the right to comment on any item on any planning commission agenda. So this would be the appropriate time to entertain public comments.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say now this is the time for public comment on this item. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to this item should have begun a submittal of the online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comments into the record. If you are participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, press *9 and the clerk will call on you at the appropriate time. At this time, I will ask the city clerk whether any comments have been received by the online comment card or whether anyone has raised a hand to make audio comments.
I do not have any online speaker cards, but there is one raised hand. Vicky Jo Sewell. Oops, wait a minute. She keeps jumping around. There we go.
Unmute.
Yes.
Hi, I live directly behind this project. My name is Vicky Jo Sewell. I've lived in Emeryville at this address since 1980. So for 40 years, I've been able to see the sun rise in the morning. And that space behind there is really a beautiful garden. And I run the garden across the street at the community garden. And I think my garden will unfortunately be very sad soon. But my question is, what are you doing on the property line? Is it the concrete building structure for the first story? What are you doing on our joint property line right here?
Yeah, so the proposal is that there would be a...
Should we...
Chair Thompson, the speaker has 3 minutes to make their comments, and this is taking up their 3 minutes. Do you wish to pause?
I just want to know the answer. What's happening on the property line?
Do you wish to pause the time and ask and allow the applicant to respond, or what?
Oh, yes, please pause the time. Let him respond.
I'm asking the chair of the Planning Commission.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, yes. Well, yeah, I think that's probably the appropriate course of action, is to pause the time and then to have the applicant answer the question directly.
All right.
Okay, so a property line fence is proposed, and then the building is set back 5 feet from that property line. That allows also a landscape open air exit path from the garden space. So that's the current proposal.
Okay, what's the height of your fence?
That's not been determined. Like I said, I don't know if the city has a policy on that, whether it would be 6 feet or if it could be taller.
I'm going to restart the clock. You have 2 minutes left.
Oh, just make sure you stay on your property line. Because I'm not giving any inches away.
Will do.
I have no other redress, so just stay on your property line.
Vicki, is that the end of your comments, or would you like to?
There's no help for me. How do you fight it? We do need homeless housing. My plants will just die. I'll never see the sun in the morning. And I guess it'll keep me wanting to move out of Emeryville quicker. So that's how it goes for me.
Well, thank you for your comment, Vicki.
Did you get any comments from any of the other neighbors? Do you even care about the other people who live in their single unit homes around there? No.
So Charlie, how are we on time?
45 seconds left.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Charlie, do you see any other commenters?
I do not see any other raised hands. Let me just double check my email again. I have no online speaker cards.
Okay. We'll wait one moment more. However, hearing no additional requests to make comments, the public comment portion of this item is now closed. So we're going to bring it back to the commission for deliberation. And if you can actually get rid of the presentation.
Oh, okay.
That will help me a little. Actually, we have questions, don't we? We should post the questions up.
That's right. Niru, do you have the questions available? Well, if you want to keep, let me see if I can find them.
I can also just read them.
Okay.
So question number 1, does the commission have any feedback regarding the overall project? Question number 2, does the commission have any feedback on proposed parking amenities, usable open space, and population that the proposed project will serve? Does the commission have any feedback on the concessions and waivers of development standards requested by the applicant? So those are the questions before us. Any commissioners that would like to take up those questions? Vice Chair Young?
I would. Yeah, hi. Well, great presentation, you guys. I was just kind of sitting back and listening to some of this, and kind of interesting project. So I kind of looked at this project and realizing that there's, this SR 50 set up to present a kind of an idea, and we really appreciate you asking our opinion on this. I like, there's a few things that I think overall, I like overall how you kind of intended to have some commercial spaces and stuff down on the ground level. My hope is that it does scale itself really nicely to the street level. It scales itself to the buildings across the street, and maybe quite in some way or another, maybe neighbors on both sides. I mean, there's one neighbor that's highly artistic, and the other neighbor is it's kind of a series of residential homes that have a certain kind of flavor. So maybe there's characteristics that could be brought about that. In terms of the number of floors, I vote for possibly the lower elevation. I think I think having 3 parking spaces, this zero parking concept. I mean, people are going to move in and they're going to have cars, and they're going to park their cars on the sidewalk. And so it's going to put a lot of pressure. It's not like these, they're going to sell their car, they're going to take the bus everywhere, but somebody's going to have a car there, and it's going to add to that little price. Even if 10%, but that's okay. I can understand the use of buses and commercial systems. I understand that. In terms of the amenities, I like the usable open spaces. I'd like to see quite possibly showers that would be brought on the ground floor if they came up with Commissioner Mendez's idea of having a fitness center. Maybe there would be an opportunity to have a shower or something like that, and men ones on both sides with possibly a sauna so they have a chance to relax. I don't know if that's something that would be, there's room for that, but maybe as much. One thing I didn't like about the plan was that in front of the elevator lobbies on every floor, there's always going to be one unit that's going to have, you can pull it up if you like to. There's always going to be one unit that's, your elevator door opens, and if they have their door open, you're going to be able to look right into their unit. And I kind of like to see if there was, as you guys are massaging this in one way or another, to make sure that's staggered or step it back or something as you're massaging spaces, and make sure there's kind of a node in front of the elevator and not just this hallway with 2 elevator doors, and across the hall are these office spaces. In the bike area, I noticed that you have this large room for, what is it, a 90 number of bikes that you're planning to be there. I think it might make sense to have a bike door that the bikers could actually go in and out of, rather than having to go through the garage space and having to deal with a roll-up door, and then they could just go in, have their own private door to go in, and it's closed, and there's be neat to have a direct exit. I'd like to see in a building like this that there's operable windows, that they're not fixed closed, and maybe that's something that's in the plan too, but it's something to think about. In terms of the, a couple other notes here, just almost last thought here a second. Yeah. So on page 45 of your document, you don't make a mention of that 2-bedroom manager unit. So if you look at the percentages, it says you'll come up to 98% of units, and I think the other 2% is supposed to be the manager's unit. That's and then if So I understand the SB 35. It makes sense, and you're after only objective ideas about this. But I'm kind of hoping that my suggestions don't sound exactly always objective, but partially subjective. So that's my particular comments, and I think it's a good project, and I hope you can do something really good with it. And I think I've covered everything.
Thank you. That was very helpful feedback. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Keller?
Thank you, Chair Thompson. Just a couple of comments. If I could suggest to you guys, it's not required, as our assistant city attorney said, but bring it back, especially when you have a better fleshed out idea of what the exterior will look like. We really helped the project at 3600 make a better project out of it. They really appreciated that. So I think we could provide some input of a local knowledge and something that architecturally will speak to our city and be a benefit. They were going to do an all white building, which would have been a dirty mess. And once they, heard and got that concept, they really understood it. So I think we can provide value, even though we don't have a say in it, so to speak. Appreciate how you've pulled the south side of the building away from the neighbors, stepping it back and stuff, so it's not so looming, and given some space on the west side as well. I really appreciate the daylight corridors. Where I live, Pacific Park Plaza, our hallways are totally dark. There are no windows or anything. And wherever I see those, I really think that's an added plus to an experience, people going home to have daylight. Plus, just like if you have kids, they could look out the window, if they're in the hall and stuff. So I think that's a really good thing to have. I think the lower height would be preferred. I think it's unfortunate to lose, the added units, because we know we need as many as we could get. But I think in that neighborhood and everything, that the lower height is probably going to be preferred. And I think for you guys, it will be less expensive. In regard to parking, you have the 2 handicapped, and then whether you have 5 or 3 of the other spaces, I really don't know that we're going to feel that loss when you have over 70 units in the place. I don't know. And, I don't know how many homeless people have cars. I know some live in their cars, but usually that's not a clientele that is car dependent. And our city council has pretty much spoken by removing our minimum parking standards that parking is not, I don't know if it's not my feedback or. So I think bringing in the supportive surface of space than the 3 or 5 parkings is more important. I think the people that you guys are serving really do need support, because we know that they come from different backgrounds with different issues that led to their homelessness. And I think if you're providing the assistance to give them stable home and getting jobs, I think that is really the community support aspect. I think is probably one of the most important parts of this. So I think that's definitely outweighs parking. So I think it's a good project. I hope you bring it back for a little bit more feedback, especially when the details of the architecture is a little bit more spelled out. I think if you can have opening windows, I think that's also much preferred. So right now, I think that's my only comments. And thanks for doing this. I just wish there's something you guys can't control, but I just have to make a statement that I think we're segregating this population to this part of town. And I don't know if it's the way our city is made up or where it is, but we just seem to have all our supportive housing on the southeast side of town. And I realize that's where the buses are. That's where, the big grocery store is. But I wish that the city would look at finding places, a way to integrate this population in with our city instead of segregating them into a particular part of the community. But that's neither here nor there for you. And I just thank you for building this housing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Keller. Commissioner Chafe?
Thank you, Chair Thompson. So just a few comments, mostly following on the questions I asked before. It's a great, exciting project. I'm really excited to see the plans. I do wish that there was some way that you could include a few units that were 2-bedroom to fit in a few families. And every time that this comes up, like I remember in our previous discussion about 3600 San Pablo, I know it's a real trade-off between the total number of people or units that you can fit into a building, but I just feel like we have several projects that are not catering to families, and I wonder if we're missing out on a significant part of a very needy population. So I have no idea if that would work out for financing, but I would really encourage you to consider that seriously if you haven't already. Second point related to that is, assuming that there would be a few units filled with, say, a parent and child combination, I wonder if you could isolate a couple of the lounges or a couple of floors to provide infrastructure that caters a bit more to kids. So it could be as simple as just what you put into the lounges, or something that you have on one of the roof decks, for example, just to take into account that that is a group that you may end up with. As I said before, I love the outdoor space and roof deck. Even if it's not a large number of square feet, I think just having something there is really important. My understanding is that if you had floor 6 and 7, you'd have 2 roof decks, and that almost sways me in wanting to say go for 7, just to have those 2 different levels and obviously add more units that way. So I think my preference would actually be for taller, which is not always the case. In terms of parking, I'd echo what was said before, that I think less parking is better in this case, especially given the location. I would encourage you to think about making a few of the bike parking spaces accessible to cargo bikes and trailers. And let me see what else. In terms of outside design, I think something we've discussed with other projects is possibly having some public art on the outside of the building, like built into the design. And I think it's a really interesting option for that corridor. So something else to consider as you move forward with your design is, how you could integrate an art aspect into the outside facing area. And then in terms of the commercial space on the bottom, I know we had a lot of discussion in the past about space for ECAP. And so I was wondering if that's been considered at all, potentially providing some extra space for either ECAP or another organization like that, or potentially a job training program. I'm forgetting the name of the coffee company in Berkeley, I think 1591 or something like that.
1951.
Thank you, yes. Yeah, so, something like that where potentially there's some job training or experience opportunities on site that also provide a commercial opportunity. But that's it for me. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, very helpful feedback.
Thank you, Commissioner Chafe. Commissioner Mendez?
Hi, yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. This is, we all know that we're in desperate need of affordable housing, and this is great that this is a 100% affordable housing project. That being said, I would really like to see maybe more private outdoor spaces. Having shared outdoor spaces is great, but myself living in an apartment building, I know that even pre-COVID, like a private outdoor space where you can have like a little sitting area, maybe some plants is preferred. And sometimes the shared outdoor spaces are not used as often, even though that they're great to have. And I would definitely encourage having as much outdoor space. I would suggest maybe having some units, maybe the ones that are a little bit larger, have the 1 or 2 bedrooms, have also an attached outdoor private space. I just think that would make the project a lot better, and it would make the people living there feel like they have like a little private area for themselves in outdoors. That's one of my comments, and I would gladly, trade some shared outdoor space if we can get more private outdoor spaces for the units. That's one of my comments. And another comment too on having outdoor spaces. I think having those rooftops are great, but I think maybe focusing more on activating the outdoor spaces and not just having them be this large space, but maybe having a little bit more sectioned off in areas. I think that would give people a little bit more, they'd be able to feel a little bit more comfortable being outside. And then another thing that I would suggest too, if we can, is connecting the 2 rooftops somehow with like an outdoor stair, so that, you're not, if you're on one level, you're not you don't have to go all the way down to another floor to get to another level. I think that would just create a really good dynamic between the floors. And then on Commissioner Chase's comment about maybe making some of the lounges or community spaces more children oriented, I would also suggest maybe moving the laundry spaces on all the floors adjacent to those community spaces. I just know that sometimes some parents, when they're doing laundry, you can have, hang out with your child in the lounge space, maybe watch TV or just relax while you're doing your laundry. I think that's a really good adjacency to have. Let me see what else. I also support getting some community art in there or incorporating it somehow in the building. Emeryville is known for a very artistic city, and I think just bringing that into our buildings and into our community would be great. And also on parking, I also don't think it's a big issue on parking. We want to be able to promote and encourage more public transportation, and we're moving away from providing so much parking basically for each building. So I don't think the parking would be an issue. I do agree that maybe we need to accommodate for larger bike spaces for cargo bikes, and so maybe having a double door going into the bike locker rooms would be better, and to accommodate those larger bikes. And I think those were all my comments. All the other commissioners brought up really good points that I was also thinking. So, but yeah, this is great. I'm totally supportive of this project, and I hope it moves forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mendez. Commissioner Zepko?
The great thing about going later is that all my other fellow amazing commissioners have already given most of the comments that I would say. I would just really, just as based off of what Commissioner Keller really, I think, made a really sound point, which is it's starting. I'm the chair of the housing committee as well here for the city of Emeryville, and I'm starting to notice that there is this clustering that is happening in that area. I think that the way that Commissioner Chafe was kind of describing, maybe utilizing the fact that you do have this commercial space within this amazing housing project that you're creating, that could also be kind of supportive as well of the community that lives there. And I think that's an excellent idea if you're able to bring on somebody who, affords or gives job training. Or I think one aspect that we don't really maybe talk enough about are like the mental health challenges that come along with having been not having like housing, right? And so kind of like being able to humanize and reintegrate people back into society so they don't necessarily feel like they don't have those resources, or they have more of a community. Take the idea that, there's this clustering that's happening. Well, okay, then maybe utilize that as a way to kind of reach more citizens, right? That are facing some of the, not the same exact challenges, but some of the same challenges. And then utilize that as an opportunity to kind of help effectuate that positive change outward. I would love to see that. As far as what's been discussed in terms of maybe limiting parking in order to get more units, I think that's great. I also like that you are kind of considering how to work with the community around you in order to make sure to respect that they also have a vested interest, obviously, in living and sharing the space around the new development. And I like that as well. So overall, just really excited, and thank you so much for your presentation. I can't wait to see what comes to fruition, right?
Thank you, Commissioner Zepko.
Thank you.
Commissioner Simons?
Excellent. Well, I'll keep this short since we've already heard from many other commissioners. I think lastly, I would just like to repeat what various other commissioners have mentioned about the importance of doing family units. I know we're giving a major concession around height and density, and I think a reasonable place to give that back might be, although obviously height and density is great, it might be nice if we can get a couple of family units, maybe a floor or something for families. I know there are many homeless families in our community, and it would be great if we can provide homes for them. Thanks for the great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm finishing with commissioner comments, and to answer the questions, does the commission have any feedback regarding the overall project? I think overall, in terms of who it's serving, the population that it's serving, I think it's a fantastic project to provide this opportunity for people experiencing homelessness and to have options. But at the same time, I would say overall, it is of a size and scale that the city has not anticipated in this area. And so, I mean, just even the statistics around that, you know, if you were to do a traditional development, it would be with bonuses at 3 FAR and your proposal was at 5.3, means it's big. And so I think I really do support the reduction in height. If that is actually helping your financials, I would say that is the move in the right direction, mostly because of the stated objectives of the city of Emeryville. I think, again, the question about does the commission have any feedback about proposed parking, amenities, usable open space, and the population it will serve. It's great to hear the attention to the supportive services. I think that's essential for this type of project. So it's just great to hear that focus. In terms of the proposed parking, I do prefer you ask very specifically about the bike room. I do prefer it off of Adeline because I think that facade, to have active spaces on that, even if it's office spaces, but to have people in the windows, I think is a better frontage, and to have that continuous is very nice. In terms of the outdoor space, I too support the outdoor space, and I would second the comments by other commissioners about having maybe a kid lounge or job training or thinking about how to integrate art. So I'd say all of those things, I would second them. The final question about does the commission have any feedback on the concessions and waivers? I think I really addressed that in the beginning where you know, I know the waivers and concessions are part of this process, but in terms of also just trying to keep within the aims of the city as stated, and then trying to work with this process and balance that all with financials, you know, I'd say just keep trying to balance all of those things. I think you're headed in the right direction. So do come back to us. I appreciate that you offered to come back to us, and I would say we'd love to see it in a further developed state, and to just have a conversation with you about it again. So I think those are my comments. Are there any additional follow-ups? Every once in a while, there's something else that someone needs to mention. Okay.
Everything is okay. Everything's well said. It's wonderful.
Okay. So fantastic. And because we have no action at this time, we say thank you, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. It's very nice. All right.
Thank you very much. The comments have been very helpful for us. We will follow up on those and get back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Wonderful.
So we have one more thing on our agenda. That is the planning commissioner comments. Are there any planning commissioner comments? So for the new members. Okay, for the new members,
I would like to welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Here you go. Yeah, do it for me.
No, Commissioner Vice Chair Young, go ahead.
I just wanted to welcome our 2 new commissioners. Thank you very much for your input. It's really nice.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Commissioner Mendez, did you have something similar or different?
Yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and welcome Commissioner Simons and Commissioner Sepko to the Planning Commission. Looking forward to working with you guys through some more of these late nights.
Yeah, I'd just like to say welcome. This was a pretty easy entrance. Don't expect them always to go this easy. and they could go another couple hours longer than this usually, but no, I think you two can handle it. We're glad to have you. Welcome aboard.
I'll fourth that, I think. So nice to have you on board. And great to meet both of you over the call today.
Fantastic. Yes, and I will say thank you as well. The only thing that we didn't do is we did not do the Commissioner Sahani's.
Oh, that's correct. And he never showed up. So
and he did not show up. Would it be appropriate to do it so that he can do his thing and we can do our thing, or should we hold it?
I'm not sure what you mean by that. You mean continue it to a future meeting?
Well, again, he's not here, so we wouldn't be able to personally thank him for his service. However, it would be nice to officially recognize it.
I think it would be appropriate to just go ahead and read it. And this meeting is being recorded, so he can see the video of it.
There you go.
If you don't mind taking another 5 minutes.
Sure, let's do it.
Let me make sure. All right, I will share my screen. Thank you for the reminder, Chair Thompson. I almost forgot about it. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it on my screen.
Maybe we won't be doing it?
Well, let me just try again. It's right.
We'll give them away.
I know the problem. Okay, I've got it now. All right, let me just time. I think here we go. Okay, here we go. All right. So this is a resolution for Deepak Sohani, resolution CPC number DS-2101, resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Emeryville expressing the Commission's sincere appreciation to Deepak Sohani for his service on the Emeryville Planning Commission. Whereas on September 3rd, 2019, the City Council appointed Deepak Sohani to serve on the Emeryville Planning Commission for a term commencing immediately and ending on June 30th, 2022. And whereas Deepak has resigned from the commission because he has moved out of Emeryville, making him ineligible to continue to serve on the commission. And whereas during Deepak's term on the commission, a number of major development projects were approved by the commission, including several cannabis retail or manufacturing facilities, the final development plan for the Sherwin-Williams Building 131 Adaptive Reuse Project, the Emeryville Center for the Arts, the Marketplace Parcel B Research and Development Lab Building, and the Ohana Cannabis Retail Dispensary and Restaurant. And study sessions were held on the San Pablo Affordable Apartments, Emeryville's first SB 35 project, and the Biomed Emeryville Center of Innovation, and Deepak played an active role in the deliberations on these projects. And whereas during Deepak's term on the commission, a number of long-range planning efforts were reviewed and or recommended for approval by the commission and adopted by the City Council, including elimination of minimum parking requirements, bird-safe building standards, accessory dwelling unit regulations, the pedestrian and bicycle plan scope of work, and cannabis regulation amendments. And Deepak played an active role in the deliberations on all of these efforts. And whereas prior to serving on the Planning Commission, Deepak was a consultant to the city and played a lead role in developing and presenting the concept plan for the 40th and San Pablo bus hub and redesign of the 40th Street, which was unanimously recommended for approval by the Commission in May 2019 and later approved by the City Council. And whereas Deepak consistently provided thoughtful feedback to applicants throughout his tenure as a commissioner, and whereas Deepak has thoughtfully considered ways to enhance multimodal transportation options in the city of Emeryville, and whereas any city would strongly benefit from Deepak's insightful and esteemed views, and wherever he ends up, they will be lucky to have him, and whereas Deepak's expertise as an urban designer will be a huge loss, not only to the Emeryville, to the Planning Commission, but to the Emeryville community. And whereas Deepak's attention to issues at hand will be missed, and we all welcome his return at some later date. And whereas Deepak's helpful contributions to the commission across a variety of topics will be greatly missed, now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission hereby expresses its sincere appreciation to Deepak Sohani for his outstanding service to the city of Emeryville and its citizens, and wishes him the best of luck in all of his future endeavors. Approved by the Planning Commission of the city of Emeryville at a regular meeting held on Thursday, March 25th, 2021. And there are all of your signatures.
I forgot the date was in it. Yeah, we had to do it today.
That's right.
That's right.
Oh, well, there you go.
Good job, Charlie. Thank you.
I assume you all approve of this.
We do.
Our name's on it. We better.
Yeah.
And I will get this framed and sent.
Fantastic. Great.
Yay.
Great. Well, yeah.
Thank you, everybody. That's awesome.
We're
Good
officially
night.
adjourned at 9:43.
All right.
Thanks, and goodbye.